2013. We'll go with item 1, approval of the agenda for tonight.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as outlined.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second.
Truman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Hudson, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
I need to excuse Councilman Turek. He's decided he needed a spring break, so we're gonna allow him that. His family's going on some kind of a cruise.
Yeah, they were on a cruise or something, huh?
Yeah.
I appreciate the other council members who have young children, who don't make me look like the only jerk father in the entire county who didn't take him somewhere.
Hey,
during spring
I
break.
took him in January, so.
All right.
Well, you don't help, but just keep that quiet. That doesn't help me on the jerk side of being a father.
Well, no, it doesn't, not for you.
Item number 2, review of the payment approval report. Anything that came out?
I have Kimberly here, so
I didn't have
she
any.
has all the answers.
Yeah, I think I had a couple. Let me open it up here quick. There wasn't anything significant. But seemed like a shorter report than usual.
Maybe that means we spent less money.
Yeah, let's say that.
I guess just on the repair of fire engine 88, I guess the 21,643, that was just repair work.
We actually had some damage that was done to it where we had an insurance claim. So we did receive money in on that. I don't recall the specific details if it was somebody that hit, I think they hit our engine when they were on the way to a call, but.
We've had a couple of issues, and I'm not sure which one this is, so I don't know.
So it's
We
this
had
the-
one where we hit the door.
So it was that we had to send it down to Las Vegas for the actual repairs, but we did receive insurance that covered the bulk of it, and then we
Okay.
had to pay some out of pocket.
Yeah, I think that is it.
Okay. Then there was something here, the community center, a lease for DeLage Landon. Are we leasing something? It's on page 3.
Page 3.
Yeah, the second item on page 3, DeLage Landon, lease, $335.70.
I don't know. We can find out on that one. I'm not sure off the top of my head with that, and I just don't want to.
Is that an individual's name?
No, it doesn't look like it. It looks like it's a company name. Is it our security system? All right, we'll have her look up the actual.
Yeah, and that's all I had, is just those couple items.
I've got one back on page 1. There's the very bottom of page 1, the third line up from the bottom. We've got a volunteer firefighter's name and an air compressor for $800.
On page 1.
Page 1, 3 lines up from the very bottom.
We'll have Kimberly look up that one.
Okay.
So, Mayor, if you want to move on.
Okay, we'll move on. Thank you. Any others, gentlemen?
No.
Item number 3, discussion review of potential pharmacy, approximately 100 West and Telegraph Street. Ray, right, did y'all get my email?
We did, I did.
Okay.
I didn't know you knew how to email.
That was a struggle for me, but I
Pretty
got it
impressive.
there.
Okay, like you said, my name's Ray Wright. Me and my brother Ron Wright, he lives out here in Washington. I'm actually in Cedar City right now. We've been wanting to start up a pharmacy out here for a few years. He's a pharmacist. I'm going to be graduating in May. So I'm just finishing up school right now. That's who we are. We want to start up the pharmacy on 115 West Telegraph. It's where the burger place was. I got some pictures here of I can give to y'all so you can look at them. Owns the property. And then there's a few of the pharmacies in Cedar City I kind of want to design it after.
Are these the same copies as they had got?
And I also kind of drew up some plans on a bigger piece of paper. If I would have known you had drawn it up on a smaller one, but I can give this for y'all to look at when we finish up here. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Where's you said that this is a pharmacy in Cedar City? Where's
Yeah.
it at in Cedar City?
It's right across from the hospital. It's called Township Pharmacy. It's about 1,750 square feet.
And that's about the size you'd like to do?
The one I'm proposing is 1,580 square
So
feet.
it's a little less.
Yeah, it's about 150, 200 square feet less. Essentially, the three things I need to get this up and going, I feel, is 8 parking spots, a 1,600 square foot building, and a drive-through
Okay.
for the pharmacy. The closest drive-through, if y'all don't know, is Harmon's and Smith's on the Boulevard and Walgreens. So my competitors, Walmart, Costco, and Albertsons, none of them have one out here. So that would kind of be my niche, is that. The problem we're running into is the property is fairly small, as you know, it's about 0.2 acres.
Ray, have you secured the property yet? Have you worked with, I think UDOT might still own that piece?
Yeah, I spoke with UDOT 2-3 weeks ago, and they told me as soon as they get a property surplus manager, they would put him in touch with me.
There's also
They're on hold.
a gentleman that owned the property where the burger place was, that I think may have maybe a position where
He holds
he,
first
yeah,
right
he
of
holds the
refusal.
first right on that, and he
Oh,
may also
really?
be able to help you. I may speak for all of us. We would love to see something of this nature
Right.
on that piece of ground. I mean, that would be really neat.
Okay, do you have his name by chance?
Is it Steve's land?
No, it is Lamar Miller.
Lamar Miller?
Lamar Miller.
I thought Lamar sold all those rights to that.
I spoke to Lamar a few months ago, and
He still has-
his son was looking at something. They couldn't quite come up with something that fit there. So I know that from what I hear, it's kind of just hearsay, that they have first right of refusal still on that piece. But he may be somebody that you could coordinate with on a few different levels. So I'll see if I can get his number
Okay, yeah, that'd
to
be
you.
great.
I'm not sure if I have it saved or not,
Okay,
but I can get it for you.
okay, perfect. I guess the reason I'm coming before you is because the first thing to do would to be get approval of what I want to do on the land first before I go and buy it and build, obviously. So the 3 concessions I'm looking for is, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the code that you have, but you want to have 10 feet of landscaping on every street side of the property, and I would be asking for a little bit less on that.
Well, couldn't we do our downtown zoning?
Yeah, this is still one that's gonna be applicable. We
But
actually.
couldn't we adopt that to?
Or we could just
No,
wait.
this one's,
could
no,
just
this one
waive
doesn't
it.
fall within that. So what we're looking, we
downtown
recommended that
mixed
Ray
use.
come and talk to you about this because of what he is asking. And from a community development standpoint, we do not have a concern with what he's requesting. Well, I think,
Yeah, I don't
if it's the
think-
same 3 we've talked about, we don't have a concern.
Yeah, I spoke with
Drew.
the mayor, Roger, and Drew, and they suggested I come talk to you. Essentially, that's I think it's one of the smallest properties you guys have on all Telegraph. So asking,
So you need the frontage to be a little less for landscaping?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it were 10 feet, we'd be talking about 20% of the land just in
Right.
landscaping. So the way I drew it up, and this might be a little bit hard for you guys to see, but I'll hold it up.
You know what, can we at least put a portion
Yeah.
on there and then maybe you can,
It'll show on all the monitors once it kicks in. I don't know what-
Tara knows how to do this for us.
Yeah, there you, well, there's the,
That's
Boy,
impressive.
Ray, that looks good.
it's just the IT director's trick that he plays on everybody. Yeah.
So that's gonna be the very northwest of the property up here. We got the building, parking lot will be right here. We got an ADA. According to the city, you guys want a 9-foot wide handicap spot with an 8-foot wide van accessible spot, and I drew it up to be 8 and 8 feet, and that's ADA acceptable. That's the American Disabilities Act, so that would be acceptable to them. So that would be one concession I'm asking for. Down here, we're gonna do 7 feet of landscaping. And that, on this end would be a little bit higher, and cut it down to help with the drive-through down to about 4 feet, come back up to 7. Then on the corner of the property, we'd have 14 feet right there. We'd be able to do a little bit more right there to make up for some lost ground this way. And then on the far east side of the property, we'd be asking to do 4 feet of landscaping there. And that would allow for essentially 6 full parking spots, 1 handicap parking spot, and then a compact spot right there, which would only be 8 feet wide by 16 feet long.
I don't speak for the rest of the council, but with our new sidewalk and planter boxes and such, I'm fairly comfortable reducing the landscaping requirement along Telegraph. And especially if it would allow you to add another stall or create a better ADA stall. I think we've got an opportunity with how well the sidewalk's already landscaped that we.
Right, that's what we talked about too, is you already have, and this sidewalk's 9 feet 6 inches long. I went out and measured all this. What Drew told me to do is measure it from the sidewalk up. So I have 74 feet this way and 132 feet this way. Sidewalk's 9.5 feet there and 4 feet on this other edge. So yeah, you already have the planter there in the sidewalk. So if we did another 7 feet with a good corner, you know, we have some trees over there in the corner where there's 14 feet. And I mean, we'd make it look good, obviously. I think it would be good for all of us.
Is 13 feet wide enough on the drive-through coming around?
Yeah. I went out and drove today in my dad's truck. He's got a F-150. It's about, obviously we don't want any dualies going through there, but that's typical for a lot of drive-throughs. We'd have 17 feet on the end. It goes out to 19 feet right there, as you can see. And with that little,
I guess what, and maybe what we're saying is, are you set on 7 feet?
You
Or
might be able to
you
get
might be able to get
4
more
feet.
asphalt if you did, like Councilman Segmiller's saying,
yeah,
a 4 foot.
5 feet, 4 feet would be great. But, I mean, I don't want to come in here asking for too much. I think that
No feet would be
the
better.
biggest problem we have with, I think 13 feet is enough, and we can only go 20 feet from the sidewalk according to your other, you can't go 20 feet, I think it's
Back.
a setback or something like that. As soon as you straighten out, 13 feet is fine. I mean, the average truck's 8 or 9 feet wide.
And
so
what's
yeah,
what is our requirement right now?
20-foot setback off the.
But on the landscaping strip, we require how much?
10 feet.
So my take is if we're gonna reduce it from 10 feet, I'm no more stuck at stopping at 7 feet as I am at 4 feet. If we're gonna reduce it at all, if the cause justifies a reduction, I want you to do it well, and let's reduce it to where it needs to be reduced down to.
Okay.
Then it either justifies it or it doesn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I don't know if that.
I agree with
If we're
that.
gonna reduce it,
That's a good
let's
point.
reduce it in a way that accomplishes as best as possible what we're reducing.
So that you
it
can get
for.
as many people through there that aren't gonna cause problems and wreck the landscape that might be there.
No, I'm not saying 0, but I see how you've done that little loop right there. If you were to level that out and just say we wanna, I'm not, I mean, that's not gonna make the decision for me. I'd like it to be done well, and if it justifies it, I'm gonna give you the variance, whether it, I think you get my point, yeah.
I feel the same.
Okay. As far as in order to get the 4 parking spots here, I had to make the building 42 feet tall, essentially. Parking spots, according to your city code, are gonna be 9 feet tall. These are only 8 feet 8 inches. So in order to get it wide enough for 4 parking spots, I would have to make it 43 feet. Building 43 feet tall, essentially, that would only give me 19 feet on the setback. Do you foresee that being a problem, or do you think that would be, I mean, I know it's.
I wouldn't have an issue with that.
Councilman Staley's really a stickler about setbacks, I know.
I'm not a stickler on setbacks. I'm a softie. These other guys, we need to check.
What was the setback again? I'm sorry, I was.
It's 20 feet is the code, and that's what I have right here with the 13 and the 7. So essentially, I'd extend the building out another foot, be able to make these stalls 9 feet.
So you're
which
trying
is
to,
what code is.
so you're looking at a 19-foot
And
setback.
19-foot setbacks.
Is the Bon Appetit building within the 20-foot setback, or was it built before we had that?
It probably was
It's-
built before, but
it
I don't know
seems
the
pretty
answer to
close.
that. But did you talk to Drew about that particular issue?
He said everything would have to go through bids.
Okay, but did you talk to him about the setback specifically? Because,
Yeah.
okay,
I mean, I discussed it.
all right, well, that's good. Because setbacks we get a little bit more nervous about than landscaping for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But I just wondered if you had talked to him and what his input was on the setback, if he felt the reduction on setback was.
Yeah, the best use, I mean, like you guys are saying, we want cars to be able to get in and out of here. But the thing I'd do is not extend the building, but just push it down a foot so we have 13 feet on top as well. Because right now we only have 12, which was enough for the truck to fit through easily. pretty comfortable with it, but I would still like to go 13 if I could, and have a 19-foot setback.
That building
Right
too.
on.
The building that used to be there had a drive-through, so they were able to pull it off, and it was tight, but it worked.
Yeah.
Remember that, Mayor? You could get a drive-through shake there.
Yeah, on the backside. They
But
didn't
then you
have
had,
anything
but
on the
then you would
front.
It
have
wasn't
a
a complete
telegraph instead of
turnaround, though.
coming around.
Because they
That
could
would be-
access telegraph.
Telegraph, and if you guys want to prove that.
No. Yeah, I don't think we're doing that.
That's the judge's car lot right now, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Adjacent to it.
So I guess what I'll come back at you with then is I'll move the building down a foot, ask for the 19-foot setback, and then probably make this 5 or 6 feet, and have the drive-through be 14 feet wide there, and then get these parking stalls to 9 feet, which are up to code.
And if we looked at some variances and some concessions, would you also look at, I really like the way that your brother, is it your brother's pharmacy in Cedar?
It's one of my, I mean, I didn't answer.
But-
I'm doing pretty well.
Okay, but that's
Is that
a
Evan's
really
place?
good, that's a good, go ahead.
Evan Vickers' place?
He owns most of that.
Okay.
I mean, that's a really attractive looking building, and obviously, we want attractive looking, kind of a historic looking buildings downtown too, so, I think from my standpoint, maybe in trade for some of those concessions, we'd like to see some attractive, a building that fits some of that early Mormon historic look. I mean, it doesn't have to be all out, but some nice little touches that give it that kind of historic feel, because this is a really important piece of property.
Has any staff member shown you the renderings? We had an architect go through and do some renderings and some concepts. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
Okay.
We gave you some copies of that, didn't we?
Yeah. I spoke with Dan Hoops, he's a contractor here in St. George.
Mm-hmm.
He feels like we could do something you guys are looking for in the same price range as we could. You know, that building, it doesn't have to be that, that would just.
But that, I mean, that style of building, but you could do a few things that would just kind of make it fit Washington.
Yeah.
That would make it tie in with the museum or with the Staley Catering Building or the Release Site House. Some of those things, that's a little bit, so to me, I would be comfortable with some concessions on our end if you could kind of help us
Yeah.
get that, because I think something like this could really jumpstart a lot of other good things there.
Yeah. I mean, we plan on doing the pharmacy with the ice cream, bar and the soda fountain there, which I think fits.
That's great. That's great.
We made that a condition of him coming before the
That's
council.
It's right down the street from my house.
That's a good call.
No, I'm just gonna,
That's a must.
Is that why every
it's
time
gonna be
you
a
go
problem.
get your
Every day my
prescription
kids are
filled,
gonna
you
ask to
have
go
a
for a walk.
shake?
Gotta go get an ice cream.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I guess the next step would be for me to draw that up. I would, yeah, I mean, I'm totally willing to work with whatever I need to do to make the building fit downtown Washington.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be a problem. So I guess I just need to get this approved, talk with Lamar and find out when I can.
I've got his number. I can text it to you if,
Yeah,
what's,
my number's 773
okay?
7379.
Okay, I'll text it to you today.
Okay, thank you. And then, I guess how can I get this in writing and proof from you guys?
Well, what you'll do is you'll just start your application then, your land use application. We'll just have to go through the normal process and then we'll figure out, if we look at that as a variance or.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'd be working with Drew's department again, and you'd get your application, and Drew's gonna help you make sure you get the application all put together right. And then you make a formal request, and we come to a formal meeting and have to take an action
Okay.
and give it approval.
You'll probably really go through planning commission first?
Yeah.
You go through planning commission and they'll make recommendations, but ultimately there'll be a recommendation to this body, and we'll have the final say.
We'll come to the CUP eventually, so whether or not that takes a variance route right off the bat or not, or whether that's just gonna be worked within the CUP with kind of some legislative discretion there, he can work with Drew too. I think we still gotta figure out what track it's gotta take to get there.
And Drew can read through these minutes, so he knows the things that the council has
Okay,
discussed, and so he can work through those things with you.
It's exciting. We would, I
Yeah.
live right there. I'm excited. I think it's something that we need right there. It's not fun to drive down that street and see that empty property and
Yeah.
rack your brain hoping that somebody does something with it. So it'd be exciting for you to do this. I think it'd be a big plus for our community.
And when these meetings go too long, we can pop over for a few pills.
There you go.
Maybe you do takeout after that.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ray?
No?
Any
Do you
other?
want- do you want these back?
I don't know, I don't need them. I got them
Ray, thank you very much. We are excited about having that come on, so.
All right, thanks, Mayor.
You
Thanks,
bet.
Ray.
Mayor, as a follow-up on that, the item for $800 on the compressor with Quinn Gibson, he's the Snap-on tool guy. We bought a compressor for Station 62. Actually, we got a very good deal on that, so, but it showed up with his name. Good question, though, because he's also a fire.
Yeah, I just noticed he was a
volun-
firefighter.
On our volunteer firefighter ranks, but it was through the Snap-on tool.
Okay.
And is the copy machine contract.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on. Item number 4, discussion and request from the Narrows Church to use the Washington City Community Center for their services on Sundays. Pastor?
I don't know, well, I'm Pastor James Hazelton from the Narrows Church. I don't know if you guys had gotten,
Saw your
did,
letter,
is it
yeah.
Dennis or
welcome.
Denise?
Denise.
Denise.
Okay. So shame on me, I gave her a really cool French name. Well, we're new to town, and we're Southern Baptist. We're part of the Color Country Baptist Association. And we're at the stage right now, we're meeting on Sunday nights at First Baptist Church in St. George. But technically, we're church planting for Washington City. We're just kind of going where we can go and what we can afford. So I've been looking for some place that we can meet on Sunday mornings and just, rent it for Sunday mornings, as we're just not financially able to build our own building type of situation yet. I looked at a few places, and someone suggested why not check out the community center. So I went in and talked with Wendy, who I'm assuming is the manager there. I just asked her what kind of facilities she had, and she showed me some stuff on the interior of the main building. And I thought, well, that might be a problem because it's, Sunday mornings, I know it's not open. And so she had the idea and showed me the reception area, which actually blew my mind on meeting our needs. It's already set up. Have you guys been in that room? Yeah, of course, yeah. It's perfect. You walk in, it already looks like a church. It's open. Very few things for kids to do what kids do, and grabbing hold of things to do what kids do. And those 2 rooms are already set up basically for like perfect Sunday school setting. And she was very, very positive and kind of excited about helping us out. My thoughts on it being, I know the place isn't usually open on Sunday mornings, but the reception area having its own exterior doors, it's not a situation where you have to have all the employees on site or anything like that, and kids won't be jumping into the swimming pools. The location is perfect for our needs and where I'm supposed to be in Washington City. The facilities are great for growth. We're small now, 20 adults plus kids on a Sunday, and that gives us space to grow and be able to come up here in a few more years like our friend was and talk about a new building that we'll hopefully be building sometime in the future. So that's our request. It's very good, I think, for the community. Bringing in diversity. Obviously, this is not Alabama. There's not a whole lot of Southern Baptist influence here, but there are a lot. There are the handful that we can reach out to, and we also have a Spanish ministry that reaches our community as well. When I first moved here in '95 from Southern California, where I heard Spanish every day, I moved here in '95, and it was literally a year before I heard someone speaking Spanish, and now it's very, very common. So we're meeting that niche as well. Did you guys have any questions for me about our goals, intentions, or?
I read your letter, and I think it'd be great if we could accommodate you. I assume we lease out that rec center and the community center, that part of the building, to other people for other events. So part of the deal is going to be what happens on Sunday morning. Somebody have to come and unlock it. And I know you said, well, after you begin to trust me in a while, maybe I could have keys
Sure.
to it and
Yeah.
those kind of things. But so I think we have to look at the costs and make certain that it covers, that it's fair to both parties. And
Sure. Wendy had well, she asked me what my budget was, and I said realistically it's about $300 a month, which is pretty close to the hourly rate. I think she had said something like $35 an hour for, I forget the exact space that she was referring to, but this would be about $30 an hour. So I think it's for us, it's great. As most places want a lot more than that. I mean, we're really only asking for about 10 hours a month is what we're looking to do.
And are those all on Sunday then,
Yeah.
same time each week?
Yeah, somewhere between 10:30 and 11 is when we'd start, and be roughly 2 hours for, setup, service, and breakdown. Staff wouldn't be required to set up. We would take care of that ourselves, and she was pleased with that, because then it doesn't require, any staff other than what
So the labor, so the staff at this point would just be somebody to unlock and then
Yeah.
relock the building?
Yeah, and even then, we could get to the point where I could just pick up the key on Saturday and drop it off on Sunday.
Roger, is it a regular key, like a traditional?
I believe
Key?
so. I believe that's the case.
Okay, I'm just trying to think, because I just changed the lock on my house this week,
Yeah.
and it's set so that I have a temporary code that's only good for a certain time period.
Yeah, I think we just got a traditional key right there.
Okay.
Trying to keep
I had
the kids in.
I had a wedding reception
Yes.
there, and nobody let me have a key, I can tell you that.
Well, we know you.
Yeah, maybe that's why. Maybe that was the policy.
I would like a code that I can just get on my iPhone and open it
That'd be
remotely
sweet,
as I'm
huh?
driving into the parking lot.
That'd be sweet.
Great.
I'm just trying to think how that would, like, I think it's a great idea. My concern is making somebody work on Sunday when normally it's their day off.
Right.
To go down and do that.
So
Well, I
to
know
add-
this
add
is-
to that, just a concern of I believe the policy's been is we've never leased any facilities on a Sunday. And so I think it starts to open that discussion as well, if we're gonna.
We don't do any parks.
No, no, we don't, no, parks, I don't know, I believe at parks we have no community center facility, and we have had requests to do well, we
won't
don't do
rent-
parks.
We won't rent a park on a Sunday either.
But, so the community center, we have had requests before from family reunions and those type of things, and we've just always had that policy. That's just the policy we've had.
Yeah, I think what it may come down to, and like it or not, this is an issue either way, if we're gonna start opening on Sundays, because either we have a policy or we don't right now. It sounds
Right.
like we don't lease on Sundays, or we don't rent on Sundays is what,
Yeah, I'm not sure
It's
we
what
say
I-
it's a policy.
we're not
just-
even,
that's just
I'm not even
been
sure
the
what
It's
it
just
is.
been
So far, we haven't
we've done in the
on
past.
Sundays. I think what we need to, I think what it may end up coming to is the fact that the city council may have to come up with a policy decision, now that the issue's been brought to us, of whether or not and under what circumstances we do open up our facilities, and which facilities we open on Sundays.
I think once you open it, it can't be content-based, so once you
That-
open it
and
to
that's-
anybody who wants to come.
Yeah, like it or not, this will force the issue whether you want it or not, because part of it will be, and the pastor will recognize this, and that is, especially we haven't been opening on Sundays before, and we haven't been doing that, if what we do is make the one exception that we do make, opening up on Sundays for a religious institution to hold its meetings, but not to others, you run into an establishment clause problem, and that is the city is only allowing it for a church to do that service. So it's, as Council Truman says, I think what it may come back to is if we're not doing this on Sunday regularly, if it's not kind of what we do as our policy, we probably need to establish one and under what circumstance we do it. And it has to be content neutral no matter what.
So you're
We can't be,
saying-
we can only do it for the churches on Sunday
If we
or
have-
not the churches on Sunday.
So we set a policy where we say we can rent this this certain area if this and this and this happen.
That's where you can start. I mean, you could address it by, we'll allow all of our facilities to be open on Sunday under certain circumstances. I think the pastor's already made a good argument that there's one portion of our rec center that probably would be more, if anything was gonna be looked at, that would seem like to be the most fitting if we're gonna have established opening things on Sundays, would be that area, because it's localized. We're not opening up the whole facility. We're not dealing with the kind of sport and liability issues we would if we were opening up our whole facility over there. That would make sense. But I think it's probably going to take some type of, I don't think this is probably going to be within the parameters of Wendy as a manager over there to say, yeah, I'm going to be the one to select who can come in and who can't come in on Sundays if we even do that. So there's probably, we're going to have to see, first of all, what our kind of figure out what our policy is, written or unwritten, how we do that. Is because if we're not letting anybody in, the first time we do is to a religious organization. First
Let
thing
me
you're
just
gonna,
ask, let's
people are
say-
gonna say it's an establishment issue.
Let's say a Zumba instructor came by a month ago and said, I have a group that wanted to Zumba on Sunday mornings. Can I rent your space? What would we tell them?
What would we tell them typically?
Yeah,
No, we don't do any rentals on Sunday.
we don't,
That's always been the policy, is just we don't do any
I'm
rentals.
just picking one
We
that's
haven't
pretty
as-
popular that could
Yeah, and we
feasibly
haven't
happen.
really tried to distinguish. Now, this is the first time we've ever had a religious organization that's requested, but we've not usually distinguished what it is. We just don't open on Sundays.
Have we had a number of requests for Sundays to where there's a policy? This is the first time
That's the
I've
first
been
time
on
I've
council
ever
I've heard of it.
We
so-
probably have had over the 5 years we've been open, maybe, well, Wendy'd be in a better position to answer this, but it's come to my attention maybe a half a dozen. And they're, like I said, things like family reunions, meeting places, gathering places. We actually have had requests to open the pool, which of course is much more complicated, as was
Right,
mentioned.
staff and
But
everything
but
else.
we have had the reception center request on a number of occasions, family reunions quite often. Or even family gatherings. They'll have family gathering for family events, religious events, whatever, and they need a place to go, and it's always just been that we don't do rentals on.
Okay, so if someone came and said, I want to rent the pavilion at the park on Sunday, Tara, what you were saying is we don't do that either. In other words, our position is we don't rent them. If you want to use it, it's just on a first come, first serve then? Is that how we deal with parks on Sundays?
We don't, yeah, there's no rental use, so.
And I think part of
If we
the
did-
philosophy in times past too is just the expectation that would be expected by a rental on those days, that we don't bring in staff to deal with what an expectation might be if I did rent. We just have never done that. Now, as we grow bigger, that may become more and more of an issue that's brought before us, but at this point, that's kind of the way we've approached it.
And it may be something that starts with the committee that oversees this. I mean, have you guys ever discussed it as far as you know?
No, not
Since you've
from
been
me.
part of that committee?
No.
This is really the first time I've ever even heard that this been approached.
Yeah,
The
well-
fact that it's a religious group it only makes it more obvious to the point, typically it's from the other side, and that is, well, we let other people in, then the religious group came in.
Sure.
We only let our friends in at certain times on Sundays, but in this case, it'd be the opposite.
Yeah.
You kind of look at that opposite side of that constitutional question is, if you're the first ones we do it to, and we only do it for you, and it's just under your circumstances, there's the question that arises from the public, and that is, well, that's kind of like you're picking your group to go in there and have it, and that's it, and it happens to be a
Well, and
religious group.
a similar situation is public schools, and churches use public schools on Sundays all
No,
the
we
time.
see it as the same, well, we
Yeah.
see it as that same way too, and that's
Right.
why the question comes up. What is our policy? If we don't have one, we may have to start looking at one. If we're going to open it up for anybody, we open it up for everybody under the same circumstances, and under the same non-speech related stuff, but, we're not gonna have bull riding, my guess is we already have the conduct that can
Let me
go
write
on
that
there.
down. No bull
Yeah, well, I think we
riding.
already have conduct that we've already figured out, kind of based on what can occur at
To
our,
accommodate the facility.
Have you ever
Yeah.
been to a quinceañera?
well, yeah, but, yeah, I have.
Because those can be interesting.
I guess with what limited requests we have, I don't have that much of a heartburn about this being viewed as some establishment, because if we're gonna open it up, then it's open for everybody,
Right.
whoever first come, first serve, and I guess the question is do we, as a body, wanna make that available on Sundays and require somebody to come and do the work to do it?
And if so, maybe give an assignment to Councilman Husband's group to start coming up with some, here's how we'd like to do, if we're gonna open it up on Sunday, here's how we wanna do it, here are the circumstances under which one can do it, and here are the rental rate, everything else you would do, just as a business aspect of that.
Is it your opinion that if we adopt a policy that we'll open the reception area, do we then have to still rent the park?
Oh, no.
Okay, so we
No,
don't
no,
have
no,
to,
no, I
you're
think-
not saying once we let them into there, we've got to let them into any facility?
No, as long as our decision's made kind of content neutral, and that is, this seems like the one facility that it makes sense. We've been asked before in the past to use this particular spot for gatherings. It's
So narrowly
concentrated.
tailored, we would say the reception area is in the council's opinion, a good place to be rented on Sundays. in addition to the other days of the week.
Right.
That's essentially the policy decision.
Yeah, but the policy wouldn't be because it's really good for religious groups who want services on Sundays. It would
Exactly.
be because this is a day we could accommodate people under certain circumstances to be able to be there.
And part of those circumstances may be the amount of labor that would be required. So it may be something where it would be something rented where we wouldn't have to have a lot of setup and take down and clean up and things like that.
I think it's just like any other business. I think you take it from any other business decision. It's not gonna be subsidized in any way, especially not want to be subsidized, because then it does start to give that appearance. But just, neutral for whoever comes and requests it. It doesn't matter whether it's the pastor's services on Sunday or whether it's for somebody's gathering for a family event or something like that. So
Okay.
So I think it may be a good starting point, and I hope the pastor understands we're kind of,
Sure.
we don't have it sounds like we don't have one. We don't do it on Sundays. We probably, if we want to do this, somebody's going to have to start looking into how we're going to do it, if it's going to move forward at all. Because right now, it doesn't seem like we have anything that's even available, because we don't do it, and we don't have anything set up for it. But if you want something, you probably need to say, let's move this forward. Maybe Council Hudson's group can start looking at it, seeing under what circumstances we'd like to do it, we could do it, and that it makes sense for the city to do it.
I guess I would be comfortable with a policy that says we acknowledge that this portion of the facility lends itself to the type of requests we usually get on Sundays. And so we're okay with that. I'm not sure I'm ready to say we're opening the policy to apply to all city facilities.
Yeah, I agree. The reception center is kind of a unique
Yeah.
area, and I think we should put a policy in place. And I think our committee can definitely work on that and come up with some ideas.
I think the pastor made the best arguments of why that facility probably fits. If any of our facilities fit, it probably does.
What's your timing, assuming that we adopt that policy?
I'm pretty open. I mean, say if you guys, I know you're not saying yes today, but if you were, I would probably not do it for 2 months, so I could advertise in the community and get the buzz going around town that we're gonna do that. So something like that.
So
I
that
wouldn't
gives
be this Sunday. or
that
anything.
gives us time to sit down and formulate the parameters of the
Yeah,
policy.
it'll probably
and
take
everything,
us
so-
a couple months to put together a policy.
Okay.
depending
Serious,
on-
Councilman? I thought you were going to say by Monday.
You know what? That's usually how I would do things personally, but that's not how government works. And so, couple months.
I haven't used the force, but I could.
We try. Couple months, we usually have at least a discussion by then. So,
Okay.
but yeah, hopefully we can have something within a couple months and have a policy in place. And hopefully we have your contact information, and I'll get
All
with
right.
Wendy and
Is there someone for me to contact? I'm new to the whole.
keep in
city
contact with
council.
Wendy, probably.
Okay.
I think she's probably the best one. She'll be
Okay.
part of this committee. She's part of this committee already.
Okay.
And so we'll get that going in place, and hopefully the council can get that finalized here pretty quick and
Great.
within the next few months, and we can make things work for you.
All right. Well, I appreciate your guys' time.
Thank
you
you.
for coming.
Pastor.
Welcome to the area.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, item 5, discussion review of proposed power generation facility. Kelly Carls.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. While I get set up here, I'd like to introduce a guest I have here tonight, Mr. Richard Riley. He's with Freepoint Commodities. He's a power broker. Really, since our original Idaho contract. Dick, were you involved with Idaho Power back then? So Dick's been a great asset to us, keeping track of what's going on with the market as we look forward and trying to work with us on some power purchases. And he's also interested in this generation project, and I'll get into a little bit of the detail in the latter part of this presentation. So,
Yeah, he's been a good friend of Washington for a lot of years, and we appreciate that relationship. Glad to see you got rid of that flash drive, Kelly.
it's still in my pocket.
Oh, geez. He's spreading Stuxnet all over with his flash drive.
Really?
Yeah.
Roger's paranoid. Okay. So what this presentation is about is we're currently looking at refinancing the bonds on our 2004 bonds and some additional funding to finance the construction of a facility for our generation units. And this proposal is just kind of presentation as to how we can do that and why we would do that, or why I recommend that we do that. So we'll just walk through this, and what I've numbered the pages. If you wouldn't mind, I think as we go through this, a lot of questions will pop up. If you note the page, let me go through the presentation. I don't know why my keynote keeps doing that, but it does. If you'll note the page, then we can go back to your questions if they haven't been answered during the presentation. So. Okay, as you're aware, we own 3 of these 3520 cat engines, 2 of them in Santa Clara, 1 in Hurricane City. You've seen the plant last week. This is the proposed site that we went out on.
It's been graded and everything, right?
It's all graded and ready for utilities. Utilities are ready to go to bid, but I've put them on hold to make sure that we're ready to proceed. It was budgeted line items for the last couple of years to prepare this site for this construction. So what we have here is, these are 3 2-megawatt units housed in other facilities. They're currently providing energy through June through September from roughly 10 a.m. to 2200 hours. They're available 24/7 if needed. They're currently financed through UM's member service project, available for replacement of lost resource, but not currently available for blackout or emergency conditions. The reason being is they're not within our city. If the county goes black, we can't run them to our load. So this is kind of, you've seen this before, but this is kind of a chart that shows what our resources are and what our market exposure is. And you look at that, and we've talked about it before. The bottom yellow is our Morgan Stanley 5-year firm product. You see the little blue line, and there's our CRSP. That's our hydro coming out of Glen Canyon. A little bit of green there, that's our wind project, Mount Pleasant Wind. This particular slide does not show our newest wind project. All the pink is our Nebo gas plant in Payson area, and then the red and the blue is our local generation.
I think, Kelly, just before you leave that, I know I'm not following your rules here, but remember the Morgan Stanley, we're into our 2nd year, almost to start our 3rd year?
Yeah, we've started our 3rd year.
So resource is important to us because that horizon is coming quickly on us.
That was a 5-year.
It's a 5-year. And we're hoping to work with them right now because of the market a little bit to see if they would be willing to extend. We refer to that as kind of a blend and extend rate, see if they would be willing to extend their agreement with a new blended rate for the remaining years, but we haven't approached them yet on that.
Okay, out of that picture right there, the pink, the red, and the blue is ownership in projects. Those are resources that we own. The rest of it is basically a market purchase. Fortunately, the Morgan Stanley was a firm, which means that it can't go away no matter what. If their price doubles, they still have to provide it for what they quoted us for. So.
And the Morgan Stanley replaced which resource? What did we used to have?
Morgan Stanley replaced the IPP product we had for a 5-year product. That was basically a unit contingent product, and it was a little bit rough to manage at times. The debt service on these units, the city's purchased 3 units, first unit in 2007, the second 2 in 2008. The total annual payment on those, all 3 units right now is $315,000. Sorry, I left a 0 out there. Total debt service cost for the life of the bond is $5,380,000, and they're currently designed into the existing rate structure as a fixed asset cost. Bond payment payoff date is 2028. Okay, here's a little historical operation data. 2009, what I'm showing there is production savings as a comparison against what we ran for versus market price for the full year. Basically a 4-month run period for these units. The avoided cost is the cost that we saved by not paying transmission to bring this product in, generating locally on our own system. So in 2009 we saved $56,000. 2010, we saved $68,000. 2011, we saved $31,000. 2012, we saved $26,000. Those prices are a reflection of the market, and I'll show you that here in just a minute.
So for those on the investment committee, that would be a mark-to-market look what we're doing.
Yes.
And I guess my question is on those savings, does that take into account the amortization of the generators?
Not on the debt service side, no. That's a fixed
So-
asset. It's like building a substation.
Yeah, so I guess it's fixed assets, so if the cost of buying and servicing the fixed assets far exceeds the cost of the supply of the energy, we're
Right,
not
what-
saving.
What you would have there is, you would have to know, in order to put basically a fixed cost strike price to the unit per hour, you'd have to know how many hours you're gonna run over the life of that unit. And that's really a hard number to come up with, because, they could run 1 month or they could run 12 months.
I understand that, but I guess I'm just looking from a pure economic business decision.
Sure.
Typically, you take your total outlay and look at what you're gonna
Right.
get back in return for it, and we're just saying, well, here's what we're saving. We're
Right.
just counting the cost of what it took to save that money. So.
Right, and I'll show you some examples of why I feel this is a good investment as we walk through this slide here. So you look at your July, well, first let's drop the bottom of this slide. The first unit, 2007, market price was $200 per hour, peak power through the summer. Our strike price on the unit was $83.45. So we ran all summer long with that type of margin for 2007. July, similar, but the market started to slide back down on us. 2008, market was 122, our strike price was 83.94. When you're talking those kind of power prices, you're covering your fixed debt service, okay? 2000, and you probably remember the conversation with Hurricane where they said in the 2008 periods, they were covering their fixed cost on the assets. In fact, they were rolling in money because they were striking at $83 and they were selling for $350, $400.
Yeah, I guess the question is, if you took the $5 million you put into those 3 units and bought a longer contract with a locked-in price, which would be the better alternative?
Well, that's a good question, because what happens when that contract ends and you don't know what the market price power is?
It
and you
might
don't-
be down, it might be
It
up.
might be down, might be up. I mean, I can't forecast that.
But by then, your machines are dead anyway, and it's not.
No,
your
because they have a
machines.
renewal and replacement program on them, so they'll run for well past
30
their payoff
years.
date. Yeah.
And you do reflect, not in these numbers here, but you do reflect both a depreciation and a major overhaul cost. So you are taking into account that.
Right.
That fixed the.
Well, the major
loss
overhauls,
of
the major overhaul,
Fixed assets.
the major overhaul is reflected in these costs.
Oh, okay, so the major overhaul is in here.
Yes,
But then we
just-
do have a depreciation component that will calculate that whole
Right.
fixed
Right.
asset depreciation.
Just the debt service, the actual fixed debt service is not in these prices.
So I guess what I'm saying is, it's a good idea so long as it's not, doesn't cost us more than we're actually saving. If we
Right.
can make certain when you pencil it out, it's,
Well, and you're exactly right, and the challenge in the power market,
who knows what it is.
Yeah, and we'll walk through a little bit of that as we go through this, but
What
you can
about
see.
2011?
Oh, I'm sorry. That bottom number, 2012, should be 2011.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It was just a free year.
Yeah, I didn't get 2012 numbers in there, but they were almost identical to 2011. So I think it was 50, had a market price of 53 and a strike price of 33.93. So they're the same numbers, basically.
So basically, the strike price is the cost for us to generate our own power with these units, whereas this is what it would have cost us on the market
On the market.
for this peak time, basically over and above what our contracts
That's
account
correct.
for, right?
That's correct. And then if you look at the next one, here's what we're paying in fixed O&M costs, which is separate from the debt service or the major overhauls. $74,000 in 2009, total of $320,000 over the last 5 years. And if you look at that average, it's $80,150 per year paid to others. And basically, that's just a lease cost for the square footage that the unit's sitting on and for their manpower to run the unit when it's called to strike.
and those are important. Those in the debt service are important because when we're not in the money, those are still costs that we
are
accrue.
going up.
Right. Those are fixed. Those numbers are loaded back into these strike price costs. So, okay. And then here's the advantages. We'll walk through some advantages, disadvantages, and then some financing options to help you understand why I'm recommending this. The site's ideal, of course. Everybody I've had look at it has just said you couldn't pick a better spot. The gas is there, the transmission line is there, the transformer's there. Everything's there except for just the utilities that need to be installed at this point in time. We'd have local control and ownership of the units long-term. They're quick start units. You can bring them up and running, get them online within less than 10 minutes. The land use has already been authorized by the BLM. They've approved of it. Like I said, the existing substation has the capacity to serve.
What
Set
is
my
the
water on
increase
the
in
right.
staff needs associated with the facility?
I'm sorry, say that again?
What is the increase in staffing needs associated with the facility?
I think it's pretty minimal. I think we'll probably, as we go down the road, if we build it, we'll probably have to bring in one full-time employee in the future. But right now, we could probably staff it. Hurricane's offered to work with us on that as far as the mechanics going and training on operation of the facility. So they're really a pretty good ally there.
So we have enough staff right now to, I guess our staff are gonna all be based out of that building anyway.
Yeah, they would be
whether
housed there.
there's- Whether there's generators there or not.
Right.
It's just the 2 units right now.
Okay.
3 units.
3. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, 3. That's correct.
This, if it's constructed, would allow room for future generation units, 3 more additional units over time, as time goes by. And as you just mentioned, it solves our warehousing, housing, office, and siting issues. I got a little map of that. You know, you're familiar with the city yard as it exists. That in the near future needs to be relocated somewhere in the city for frontage road. So we need to build that warehouse and office space somewhere else if we don't build it here. So continuing the advantages, we have the ability to hedge gas. Now what that means is we do this with our Nebo power plant. We can look out 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever we want to look at, and buy a certain amount of strip of gas is what they call it for a set period of time at a set dollar amount. For example, why would we do that? We did that with Nebo, and we bought $4 gas, I believe it was, when gas was just coming off a $8 spike. And when we buy gas at $4, basically with Nebo or with these units, we're running at about $40. That's our strike price. So, you know, 4-cent power is a pretty good hedge to say, I know what my cost is going to be for the next 2, 3, 5 years, and I can, if it has to be higher than what my rates can carry, I can build that in over time. So that's the ability to hedge. The ability to forecast costs, just they go hand in hand. Provides for some rate stability because you're able to forecast out what your costs are going to be rather than just not know hour by hour. You have the avoided transmission costs, which just almost doubled this year, Roger. They went from $320 to $520,
Yeah,
or they will be at $520 by July.
yeah, and they were looking at 565 or something like
Five,
that.
580 is
580.
what, yeah. Again, it's a backup system for our city in a blackout condition. It provides resource reserves. Now that sounds kind of funny, but as of last year, FERC issued a ruling in power rate structures that if you have a unit out there such as Nebo, and it's not running all the time, but it's running pretty much to load, you know, maybe 75–80% of the time, you have to pay someone else to provide resource reserves. So if that unit fails, someone else can provide it, such as Rocky Mountain Pacific Corp. So they go out and build, you pay them money and they go out and build a facility that has capacity to back you up if your units fail. That's basically what these units could do for us because they're not running 24/7. They'd be sitting idle at times, and that would replace our resource reserve requirement. So we would not have to pay that fee. Again, it provides city and countywide system voltage support. Okay, disadvantages. Again, long-term debt commitment. Production costs driven by gas prices. As gas prices rise, these are going to follow it. You know, there's not, but so is market.
I'm hoping they rise. I'm hoping they rise.
Additional staffing and maintenance needs. We just talked about that. We'll probably end up in the future with one full-time staff member to manage the plant. Commitment to renewal and replacement. That's what we talked about in the R&R for major maintenance. Air quality concerns moving forward. Now, I only say that because you never know what the EPA is going to do as time goes by. Right now, the permit looks real good. It's clean. It's going through the process right now. But with the current permit, once it's approved, we would be approved for 4,500 run hours per unit on this current air permit. We could never run them that hard. And so that's huge. But there is concerns as to what restrictions the EPA might put forth. But those concerns don't just apply to this plant or this venture here. It applies to all generation, which is going to be gonna affect market cost no matter what.
Well, and one of the things you did not put on an advantage, and that is the issue that we're a non-attainment county right now.
It's on,
Was that under the advantage?
it's in here somewhere. I'm
Oh,
just not
okay.
sure where I locked it.
What that means is we're fast approaching that time when we're not
Yes.
gonna have that same designation.
Yeah, right now, we could probably get
Making
our.
this choice then is gonna be much more difficult.
Exactly. If we end up becoming an attainment area, the plant would be restricted dramatically and the permitting process could be 12 to 18 months trying to get it approved.
Tell me what you mean by that. Does that mean we become an area that has bad air?
That's right.
That means
You
mission
start having
controls
your,
on your cars at
you
that
have-
point.
you have testing on your cars and everything else, so.
Okay.
So let me ask you this, wasn't on there, but how is this going to impact there's residences not too far from this area? Is the noise gonna be,
No, I
how's
don't
it gonna
think,
impact them?
I don't really think you're gonna have any concern with the residents right there in that area, generally speaking. One of the things that will probably happen, it'll be like any other thing in the city, is you'll get echoing from off the rock walls around it that might travel across the city, and people will hear some of that noise on occasion. I know when I sit at home, I can hear every single piece of steel that moves at the steel plant down there, because I'm right in line with the flow of the river, and the sound travels right up to my house, and I can hear them. You know, they'll lay steel, I hear them lay it. They cut it, I hear them cut it. But I don't think you're gonna have any kind of complaints. You might have some concerns right off the bat about the size of the stacks that go in there. But, you know, you got a 85-foot steel structure that's gonna dwarf those stacks, so I really don't think so. But our plan for that is, since we're islanded in the county, we're gonna hold a public hearing in the county facilities, but invite both Hurricane and Washington City planning staff and anybody that they think might need to attend to that meeting for public input. And that's kind of a requirement of our air permit as well. We have to show documentation that we've held those public hearings.
When you say islanded in the county, this is actually, we haven't annexed this portion of the
That's
property.
correct. It's county,
It's a county portion that's BLM owned.
Yep.
Okay.
well, BLM gave it to us through an RP&P, but it's still in the county, so.
I didn't realize that.
As we talk about the future, this is really a good reason to take a look at these right now, because this is a 3% forecast moving forward. This is coming out of our current capital facilities plan, which is in draft mode right now, but we should have a final to you before budget year end. You look at 2028, when the units would be paid off, we'd have a 50 megawatt peak. The units would be paid off in 2028, and so would the facility. We currently own 13 megawatts of resource, so you know, we really need to be planning for some kind of peak powered resource as we go forward, whether it be this or something else, some other type of plant. But I will discuss what our options are as we go through the rest of this, and we can move back to this if you want.
Now, how much resource would these actually add? I mean, those trends are getting large.
Well, the blue trend you're looking at is not the one we're going by. That's a 6% per growth per year.
Okay.
The green line is the 3% trend line. That has served us very well over the last several capital facilities plans that we've done, and it has not been off track hardly at all. So that 3% I think is a fairly accurate status of where we're going to be in 2028 at a 50 megawatt load.
So to answer your question though, you can see the megawatts on the left side there, and so each of those units are 2 megawatts. And so if you add additional units, you can see where you'd stack on top.
And then if you look at the difference between the green line and the resources, you're going to have about 37 megawatts of market exposure is what it would be. So
Well, assuming we don't do anything else, right?
if we don't do
Which
anything,
would
if we just go with market the way we are today, that's where we'll be.
We'll probably do something else too.
Okay.
I hope.
We'll talk about that, because these are some things you need to know. What's our options? Coals, when you buy into a coal plant as an owner, it's a 24/7, 365 base load resource. So if you took a look at that Morgan Stanley product that we purchased that was all yellow, that's 24/7, a straight amount of power that we're getting every hour of the day, whether we use it or not. So we really can't buy into a coal plant and expect that to cover our peak power needs, because if we buy excess, we're going to have excess in the morning hours, and we're going to be selling that on the market at a substantial loss. So coal also comes with environmental concerns, as does every other generation facility in the United States, And you have to have surplus sales. That's what I just talked about, is having to sell on the market. We all know wind's a variable, it's costly, it's very low capacity factor, and requires backup generation if you're going to try to use it as a reliable resource. Same with solar. Future gas plants, everything I'm seeing, and Dick could probably give some input on this, but everything I'm seeing on what's being planned for gas plants is large plants, basically base load 24/7. Now, there is a potential to buy into a gas plant for peak power needs, but that would be a contract only, and that would not be ownership. So again, you're putting yourself in a position where you have no resource once that contract ends.
And then you'd also have to transmit the power as well?
Yes, yes.
Which would be additional cost.
Additional cost. And then your other option is market purchases without any resource ownership. Here's some concerns that I have as I look towards the future and what's happening with the industry. Four Corners power plant shut down in December, 3 units, 560 megawatts is off the grid now. The power plant in Carbon, which is Helper, Utah, is scheduled to shut down in 2015. That's 172 megawatts coming off the grid. San Juan is committed to close 2 units at 900 megawatts, scheduled 2017. Bridger is threatened with environmental issues with 4 units at 2,120 megawatts, and is considering, I put a star by this because they're considering either closing the plant in 2020 or converting to natural gas. Bonanza Deseret, 500 megawatts, has environmental issues because they're being required to install upgraded best available technology for air pollution control, and it's unaffordable. So they're looking at a possible
That's your Dixie REA.
They're looking at a possible 2017 shutdown. The scrubbers that they'd have to put on that are the SCRs, is what they call them, I believe, is $1.2 billion to upgrade that plant. And that billion. And that's not uncommon with these kinds of environmental issues. Navajo, a very big plant on Lake Powell on the Navajo Nation, scheduled potential shutdown in 2017 for similar reasons, air pollution upgrades, but the biggest reason is because California wants out of the coal industry by 2017, and they own half this plant. So there's not too many people going to walk in and pick up half ownership on this plant where it's subject to environmental upgrades.
Are they looking at the same kind of upgrades, the big scrubbers?
I'm sorry?
Are they looking at the same kind of upgrades?
Yes, they are.
Is hydro not an option for us with Lake Powell or Lake Mead, or is there any, is that an
Hydro is off limits right now because of environmental restrictions, but the federal government can change that, and if they're willing to start looking at hydro, then that's a great option, but it's not.
Is that a peak power resource or not?
It can
Or
be
a
to
base?
some degree because you can ramp those.
They've flattened it out a lot because of the flow issues over there, and so it used to be much more of a.
You would certainly buy it as a base load product 24/7, but they do have some ability to ramp, of course. Boardman up on the Columbia River, 550 megawatts scheduled for shutdown in 2020. That's already agreed to. Reed Gardner, I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's Glendale, Nevada. 4 units, 650 megawatts. I put 2 stars on this because it's on thin ice, and I say that because last year Senator Reed tried to have the plant closed down because it has containment ponds that are near a dry wash. And he felt it was a threat to the environment. He had the EPA step in and do an assessment of it, and the EPA is giving him a limited amount of time to modify their wastewater system. I don't know what that time period is, but they're monitoring them on a 90-day basis right now, so they are under the gun. IPP units, 2 units, 1,800 megawatts. Again, this is a LA ownership, scheduled for either gas-fired replacement in 2020 or shutdown in 2026-27, depending on what they decide to do. So with that being said, known today, there's a confirmed, now I've only looked at what's west of Colorado, okay? What's in the western United States that we would have access to. But there's a total confirmed shutdown of 2,182 megawatts coming off the grid. Additional threatened could be up to another 7,300 by 2020, with a loss of potentially 9,500 megawatts of resources within the next 7 years. A little more information, and maybe Dick can have some input on this too. San Onofre plant shut down indefinitely for a radiation leak last January. There's some serious problems with that plant because they did an upgrade in 2009, and everything they put in these tubes to prevent against radiation leak failed, or were on the verge of failure. That's a loss of 2,300 megawatts in Southern California. The National Regulatory Commission has said they will not let this plant come back online until they can prove that the resolution they have to this problem will solve the problem, and that's going to be difficult for them to do. Diablo Canyon, which is San Francisco area, above San Francisco, I believe. One unit's currently offline. It's offline for major maintenance. It's going to probably run into the summer months. License expires in 2022, and that's 2,300 megawatts. So California south of Frisco is in big trouble this summer, I would say. They've lost 2,600 megawatts just on 2 plants.
Is that Santa Fe, is that the one down by San Diego?
San Luis Obispo. Oh, San Onofre is, yes,
Yeah, that's right.
Carlsbad. And then Diablo Canyon is San Luis Obispo. And there's more information on this than I have here, but just as an example, if you started a nuclear plant today, it's a 5 to 6 year permit requirement. It's 10 to 12 years to build it. Financing's a major hurdle mainly because no one's going to finance a plant that has to sit for 5 or 6 years to get permitted, and you can't start the permitting process until you have financing in place. So it's kind of a catch-22. And inland construction is a major task, which means really the only place that they would look at this feasibly is on the ocean, on the coast. And there again, you run into environmental issues. You have a long battle there. And there's currently only 5 plants in the west of Oklahoma in the United States. So let's talk a little bit about the financing and how we could make this work for us. The existing system debt service is roughly $600,000 annually. The refunded RAP, which would mean bringing this new money in to build this facility, would move that number to $688,000 per year. The annual fixed cost reduction would be that bringing that $80,150 back into our pockets because we wouldn't be paying someone else. So the financial impact of borrowing the money at this point in time through the new bond refinance would be $7,800 a year. So it would require absolutely no rate increase whatsoever, and the bonds would pay off in 2029. Here's a picture of that. Roger, I hope you don't mind that I used this, but it's part of
No, and I actually showed them, I believe, this one a couple weeks ago, too.
Okay,
Go
this
ahead.
is your wrapping the money around the old debt and getting it out to 2029.
So what happens is on those first years, you're doing an interest only on the new debt. That's the small green piece. And then when your existing bonds that we're refinancing drop off, they're at 2025, then you just jump up to about the same price and taking care of the principal and the interest on that $2.5 million, those final 4 years.
Okay. And if we said we don't want to do this today, let's look at it a year or 2 from now, that would be standalone financing. So the combined level debt service would be approximately $800,000 if we do it that way. We don't know what the interest is, so that's an approximation. We bring that fixed cost back to our city, though, that $80,000, and the financial impact would be $120,000 annually for the life of the bond, 2028. You would be looking at probably a rate increase or reduction of expenses or services to maintain your debt service coverage that we have today. So, and there's a picture of that. That's how that financing would work.
And future financing could be subject to higher interest rates, right? This
That's-
is a good
yeah.
opportunity as far as
Exactly.
rate environment.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I say that $800,000 number there is just a placeholder because I don't know what the interest would be a year or 2 from now.
The interest rate for my type of bank accounts doesn't make much of a difference, but for that number, it
Makes a big difference, yeah.
Well, one of the things that's still being batted around, and with some good life to it, is the removal of the tax exemption on municipal bonds.
Yeah, that could hurt us too.
And that's really got a lot of legs to it in Washington right
Yeah, it sure does. That's about a 35% hit, is what I'm understanding.
So the added amount we're talking about, it was like 2.5 million?
Yeah,
Is
now.
that what
2.5.
we're-
That's correct.
And that's what we estimate the full cost of this facility?
That's correct.
Yeah, not full build out though. That's to build the
Not-
facility, bring the 3 units back, no additional units at this point.
Right, that would give us room for expansion in the future for additional
Yes.
generators.
So this is really, over the long run, this is kind of far from the solution. This is just a small portion of the
Small
solution.
portion of the solution,
This is
It's
absolutely.
all Kelly deals with is
Yeah.
small portions.
Small portions is what we
I
deal
mean,
with.
it's a large number, but it's a small portion of the overall solution because with the 3 units, we're only generating 6 megawatts of potentially just peak power,
For
right?
what could be a 50 megawatt block in 10 years, so, yeah.
This is why the Morgan Stanley is still important to us. This is why we're looking at the San Juan facility, the coal facility. This is why Horse Butte came on board. And that's why when we talk about our portfolio, we're talking about a lot of eggs in our basket that we have to make sure that we stay on top of in order to meet the needs.
And we just, so everyone knows, Roger's the new chairman of the Kern River Project, and that is one that we're really excited about, which is a waste heat project that will be a baseload project 24/7, and I think
That's
that's
coming
gonna-
off the Kern River gas pipeline?
coming off the gas pipeline. We're using their compressors to generate for us, and I think it's gonna be a great project, but that's probably a year and a half out before we get that online. But we will be using that as a baseload resource. So that's a very good priced product too. I think it'll come in at $44,
Yeah.
24/7 baseload, so.
So, sorry, to come back to the, you're probably gonna talk about it, I'll wait.
No, go ahead, please.
I'm just, the 2.5 million, so what kind of building structure is it gonna be? Is it, what are we looking
You
at?
missed the tour, didn't you?
I did not see the building, but I imagine it's a block building, is that?
Yes.
Are we
Under the
looking at something
BLM,
similar?
under the BLM property guidelines, we're required to match what's existing, which blends in with the natural landscape.
Okay,
So we would have to build it out of block, and it would have to be the same color as the water treatment plant.
so it has to be block, it
Yeah.
can't be tilt up?
No.
Or anything like that?
Well, it could be
stained?
tilled up, but it has to be the same color.
Okay,
Okay.
that's how schools are built, so I'm just curious, have we looked at?
We're
that's-
looking at those cost estimates right now.
We're looking at that now.
Yeah.
We just, the estimate we believe is 2.5 million is gonna
Yeah,
be plenty.
that's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so this is kind of surprising. I didn't realize there were that many, but just looking in mainly Utah, Idaho Falls has a bunch, but who owns this type of generation, these units specifically? And it's Bountiful, Brigham City, Heber, Hurricane, Idaho Falls, Logan, Lower Valley Electric, Murray. Murray has some big units though. They're running about 120 megawatts of generation. They've got multiple units. Heber has a lot of units. I think Heber has the capacity to run up to 19 of these gas-fired units. They don't have 19 in their facility right now, but they have that capability. Payson, Santa Clara, Springville's bringing in some new 4 megawatt gas-fired units into their plant right now. St. George, they're not this type of gas-fired, but they are gas-fired.
Is theirs out by the river?
There's
Out
down by the
Bloomington?
river, but they're big 40 megawatt units, but they are peaking power units, so, and Weber Basin. So that just kind of gives you a feel of what other utilities out there are doing to look forward as we go down the road here.
Another quick question before I forget it. If we built our facility, is 6 units in the long run, is that enough generators? Or would we design it for future
We're actually
expansion as
looking at, I'm
well?
glad you asked that question, because we're actually asking the contractors right now to give us a price to expand that, an optional price to expand that to include up to 8 units. So 8 units total.
Mhm.
We want to look at that, but the thing we're up against right now is because of the air permit is currently written for 6. We want to get the air permit in place without having to go back and have it revisited, because if we do that, if we tell them we're going to put in 8, we got to revisit the air permit, and that's a minimum 6-month process. So even DAQ advised us to go ahead and permit the way we are already described, and then go back and amend the permit after it's been issued. So we're looking at that.
But in the design of the building, would it be worth looking at?
We are. We're looking at those costs.
8 units?
We're looking at those costs.
And we tried to do this in such a way as that it wouldn't require at the moment a rate impact. So anything, I think we push above 2.5 million on the building is probably gonna impact the rates.
Yeah, and we could spend
But sometimes-
some reserves on this, but I wouldn't recommend we spend a lot at this point in time. This is long-term planning. That's the way I'm looking at it. You know, we started this plan in 2007 when we bought the units. Now it's time to bring them home and then look towards 2025 and 2030 as we have more need for resources.
I'm just thinking if over the long run, we need more capacity and specifically more peak capacity. If you can incorporate at least the space for additional units, it might be wise to look
Yeah,
at
we're
that.
looking at
If it's not
From
too
what I'm hearing
costly.
from the contractors, the additional cost to expand from 6 to 8 is not gonna be that great. But I wanted it as an optional price because I wanted to make sure that I could meet this financing
Because we may be
requirement.
able to afford it within what the bond issuance
Sure.
is.
Sure.
Do
Yeah,
we have
we're
a
looking
better
at-
feel for whether we're gonna get those units? I know there was some issue about whether we're gonna leave this Santa Clara
Yeah.
units in place, if so, we're gonna buy new ones. Is
Yeah,
that cost
what I suspect right now, in fact, I'll just touch on this because I think it's important. We checked yesterday or the day before, I don't remember when, on the bond, on this particular bond for the hurricane generator. And we're able to refinance that at about a $458,000 savings. So we're bringing that back to the Member Services Committee this month, next week, to go ahead and have the bonds refinanced. Now, we're only 1/3 of that amount, but that's $150,000 to Washington City. It's a big chunk of money. I think as we go through that process, Hurricane City's probably going to want to take ownership of that unit. And so we're working on all the numbers as to what it's going to cost for them to take that unit and us to buy a new one and what we can agree upon. Santa Clara is just the opposite. They're not in a financial position to buy those units, I don't believe. And in fact, they've asked us to leave those units there and put new ones in our facility, so we had additional generation. And I said that kind of defeats my purpose, but we'll talk about it. You know, maybe we can renegotiate the lease, I don't know. These are all things we're working on, so.
Is it with the rental income,
Huh?
basically?
No, it's great for them when the power goes out.
Well, it's great for them when the power goes out, but this income that they're making is built into their
That's what I'm
current.
saying, they would like to keep it there. They've got
Yeah, it's built into their revenues, so they're gonna have to find this revenue somewhere else.
You know, before you go on, one of the things I told Kelly is, I said, Kelly, and I think he's done a nice job here, I said, you got to tell the council that we're not, certainly it's true, but we're not building a building or putting in units. It's a resource.
Yeah.
We're buying a resource. And this is exactly what we do with every resource we've got. You just don't see it directly because it's through the UM's financing, but you're paying for it. So Horse Butte, Nebo, any of those, we've gone through the same discussion with, and we bought a resource. And the resources we're gonna have for the future are having to be bought resources as well. And that's the important thing. And I know we're talking about, you know, walls and machines here, but we're really buying a resource to try
And
to
this is
build
not
it.
a resource for this summer. This is a resource for the next 30, 40, 50 years. If it's taken care of properly, it'll run that long, and it'll always be competitive, so.
Real quick, let me ask Roger a quick question. Bond rates are so low right now. Are there others that, I know we just refinanced the group and we're looking at this, but
yeah.
are there other?
We're doing as many as we can. We have call provisions on some items. We have a lot of our bonds, interestingly enough, are, for instance, let's talk about Mike's stuff. Mike has some water and sewer bonds. Many of those are USDA, very, very low. Some, as a matter of fact, at 0 interest. And so we're not going to beat that. But every time we have an opportunity, Kelly snagged on this, the hurricane one pretty well, that we were within the call provisions of the hurricane units, and so let's refinance. It is amounting into some significant savings, but we can't call the Santa Clara ones, for instance. So we don't even have an option on that. You can advance refund, but when the negative arbitrage,
you
you
end
know
up
that,
paying
and
a
we're not
penalty.
in the money. We're not even close to the money. They're just too far out.
But that's something you're mindful of, you're watching that?
Yep,
as-
we've already just, if you'll remember, we've already refinanced our sales tax bond. We just did our, what did we do last year? I'm losing track. What did we just do last year?
Coral Canyon?
Coral Canyon,
Yeah, the
thank you.
service district.
The power bonds, and then beyond that, we get into just a lot of USDA stuff and that's already pretty low, but yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. This is the time.
And we're pulling the trigger real fast on this
Yeah,
generation.
There's a window of
refinance.
opportunity, isn't
We
there?
noticed it Friday, and it's already on the agenda for approval next week to get it refinanced, so. We want to get up before the interest starts
I
to
didn't mean to
move on.
interrupt you there, Ken.
No, you're
I'm
fine,
sorry.
that's what we're here to talk about. You touched on a point that fits my next slide perfectly, and that is, how could we get additional generation into Washington City? And this is basically why Dick Riley's here today. We're negotiating, we have been for a year with Dick Riley about possibly putting some units into this facility if this opportunity come along. And so we're looking at that. He's working with his company, Freepoint Commodities, to see if they can't possibly purchase these units and either sell a product to a third party and run them to market. And in over time, whether it be 7 years, 10 years, or the life of the financing, sell them back to Washington City. We would also have an option on this particular thing to have those run to load if need be. We could set a parameter where we want them to run to our load, and we would pay the price for that, but they would be available to us. And of course, we're negotiating the numbers. We're going to put contracts in place. If we can make them work, and it doesn't hit us with heavy rate impact at all, we'll bring that back to council as a recommendation. But we're currently in negotiations, and that's pretty well why Dick's here tonight, to see if this looks like it's going to fly, and then we'll give him some feedback, and if it is approved through the bond refinance to go ahead with this project, and we know we have a facility, and we know we can start getting into the detail of the negotiations over this option. So.
But is this size of unit just the optimal size for what we're planning on right now? Is that why we're just looking at these units, or is that?
It's optimal right now for Washington City because of our load size. If we were to look at 4 megawatt units, that would be far more optimal for us in the 2025 range. When we're out that far and we're looking for that much resource, bigger unit would be great.
But would this facility hold? For example,
yes.
If Dick had someone that could buy and put one in there that we would pick up in 7 to 10 years.
Well, the way this would work would Freepoint would buy the units from CAT and put them in our facility, and we would pay a capacity fee to them and have an option to determine when they run for us and when they don't.
Oh, that's why the two still makes the most sense.
Or he could possibly market all of it, or we could possibly market all of it through the UAMS group. This is all still high-level discussion, but we are going to get into the detail if this project is approved. So, again, that's why Dick is here tonight, and also kind of answer some of your questions if you had any questions about what the forward market looks like and how he feels about this kind of project for small cities. So in summary, locally controlled generation is our best option for near and long-term peak power needs. It provides backup power for our citizens and government under emergency conditions. That's kind of my recommendation. So I'll go back to questions if you have any.
So this takes a little bit of the edge off of the card game that you play every summer when you're trying to just forecast our base needs and then our peak needs. This would give you some wiggle room there.
Yeah, nothing I hate to see worse than market exposure during peak summer needs, because the market can turn. I mean, you take a look at the loss of coal that's happening right now and going to happen in the next 3 years, and I think you're going to see the market just take off on us. And I call it, I think Dick referred to it originally as a hockey stick effect. We're not seeing that in market prices right now. I can actually show you a 10-year projection of market prices if you'd like to see that. But I don't think the effect of the loss of these coal plants is built into that. And Dick could probably explain why. Do you want to?
I was just,
Go ahead, Roger.
well, no, go ahead, finish, and I'll finish.
I'll go ahead and pull this up. This is something I asked Dick to provide for us, so.
Okay, I was just going to mention that transmission is as big a bugger to us as anything anymore as well.
Absolutely. That's big dollars.
And that's where we're getting some rate increase and some rate hit is on transmission. So anytime we can take that piece of the pie out of the component, we at least like it if it fits. If it fits all the other categories, it's good.
Yeah, we're paying, right now, we're paying just under $5 a megawatt hour delivery on transmission, but by July, it's going to be $5.80. What's it going to be in 2020?
Some of the markets that we see across the country are experiencing on the transmission side 7 to 8% annual rate increases with the amount of transmission that's going exciting. Transmission lines, Kelly mentioned, the city of Idaho Falls, they've been working for 5 years just to get I think it's a 115 or a 230 to loop their system. And they can't get approval to do it. And so it takes a long time. And so costs are going up both on the transmission side. And when I gave this to Kelly, he kind of said, well, where's the hockey stick? Because we've been talking about it. And really what you see here, and I'm going to kind of, this is how the commodities guys do these types of things. We all use the Black Scholes and all those type of models. We take everything that's back cast, plug it in the model, look at a 2-year window out in the forwards, and kind of do a trend analysis. And so until something really radical happens, like if you go back in history and look around 1999, 2000 with the California market and everything, all of a sudden you saw the market just take off like this because they experienced a real big hit in a year, and as soon as that went in the model forecasted that out, and it played out almost perfectly where the prices went. I mean, if the market hadn't faded away in 2008, we'd be tracking right with the prices that you saw in contracts. Some of the guys look at it and go, wow, my contracts are at $60 right now, the market's at 30. But really, if you wouldn't have had the financial fallout, they'd be just right even with that going down the road. So this is really just a trend analysis. And so Kelly's being very insightful here, and you guys are asking a lot of great questions. With the coal going away, one of two things are going to happen. Either they're going to give some easing on that, you're going to be able to run coal plants with some improved emissions, or they're going to go in and retrofit those. And what that means is, and I'll give an example from, I live in Boise, Idaho, where Idaho Power is. We're a part of Bridger, we're part of Boardman, Idaho Power is, and those aren't amortized by any means. So if they close those in 2020, there's a big debt out there that's going to be put, it's already a rate base, and they're going to continue to do that. And then they're going to take another several $1 billion and roll it right on top of those rates for the gas. And so that's just going to elevate the pricing.
So what's Boise doing to hedge that?
Pardon me?
So what's Boise doing to hedge that? So they know that's coming down the
Yes.
pike. So
They're-
what are they doing, the same thing?
They just built a 250 megawatt gas-fired plant to start hedging their bet, and they have 700 megawatts of peaking capacity. One of the things that Kelly kind of brushed over here, and I think it's real important, and these guys have done a great job over time, by the way, with these units that you have, the 2 megawatt units of engines that you have. One thing with small municipalities like you folks have here, and a great place to live, by the way, when you add load, it's not the big industrials, the big commercial guys. It's generally residential load. And as you add more of that, your load gets, not a real word here, but it gets peakier. And so over time, your load's just going to keep getting more like this. And being able to take units like these and start them as the load starts to grow and match that is just a wonderful thing to do. And we talk here, and you see the prices here, which we call heavy load hours, which is 16 hours of the day. Within that 16 hours, you have super peak. And that's really expensive. You go out and pay for it, but you'll pay anywhere from 150 to 215% of the nearest hub price for that. And that's what you guys shave off. And so when Kelly and Roger go out and look for a contract, they're really looking for more of that base load, which is a lot cheaper because you already have your peaking capacity available for you.
No, residential customers are peakier because they're trendier. Is that accurate?
Everybody turns
they're more predictable,
their heat on in the morning and their electricity, they cook at the same time, they come home, get their air conditioners at the same time. It's human nature.
Whereas if you had a large commercial user, that would be a very large static.
It helps levels it out.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
You know, while you're looking
Or
for.
you could even start running, I mean, if you're paying based on what the cost of that electricity is of your plant, you could actually shift your crews to work when your power was cheaper, if you had that ability to really track it that
And what
closely.
Dick just said about residential load and our peaking, this is a perfect example. This is August 9th, 2012. One day in August, you'd see that blue line, that peak there at basically 31 megawatts. That's driven by not just our commercial, that's a lot of residential air conditioning and stuff going on.
I was just going to mention that I remember 9 years ago sitting down with Kelly, and I think we did it on a napkin. We were laying out our objectives with the power. And the number one objective is being safe and conservative. and having this reliable power. And I think that one of the reasons that we're presenting this to you is that this is probably one of the most conservative recommendations we could give to you, and still deal with this. We're talking about something that at this point doesn't have any rate impact upon our citizens, that brings more control in our own hand. It is terribly panicking every time we hit third quarter, of a year, and watching those market prices and that. And so I think this fits very well with the back of napkin we had 9 years ago. But this is.
With these units, we're not doing this to make money and run against the market and sell the product. This is to know what our costs are going to be as we look forward and be able to budget for that and make rate adjustments as necessary, because they are coming. No matter what you think, they are coming over time. But it gives us a forecasting tool, because we'll know what these units are going to run for and be able to manage that. Whereas if we're on market every hour of every day and not knowing what the price will be tomorrow, we have a great deal of risk.
And gas. Gas is still, everything from fracking discussions to everything else has a tendency to move that gas price up and around too. And certainly this would be a gas plant, but that's why we try to have our mix on our portfolio a little bit.
Well, that's kind of, to sum up, that's why it's a great time and why you guys are making a great decision here, I think, is that you have the ability to do some great hedging with gas right now. And looking at the existing units, reinstalling or buying new units is what he knows in. The prices are down right now, and the labor, construction, and everything that goes with it is all value priced, because the market really hasn't caught up yet. And just a quick example, in California the other day, and if I'll send the article to Kelly, but it was an article to Wall Street, and it has to do more with the renewables that they're doing, because they have so many renewables right now that all three utilities are going to the commission and saying we can't keep our system integrity anymore, because when the wind stops or the cloud comes over, it drops thousands of megawatts, and we don't have thousands of megawatts to immediately bring that up. And so you're seeing more and more, California's doing it, Idaho Power, they're all trying to hedge their bets and put these units in. And so if you're out in front of this curve, you're going to get the best value. If you wait a year or 2 or 3 down the road, you're going to be right in the middle of everybody else trying to do the same thing, and you're going to get a lot higher elevated costs, as well as to hedge the gas out, things like that. So we're just kind of right in front of this moving out.
What other options do we have besides the course we're looking at here? Are there any other options that other cities are doing that they're addressing their peak load with?
The residential municipalities are actually looking at these types of units. St. George went with a larger gas turbine, and that's great. When you get that turbine, it immediately has 40 megawatts, and maybe they just have a certain period when their load rolls and it just peaks, and so that's why they put in what they did. It's a lot more expensive to maintain, it burns a lot more gas. And one thing that we've talked about a lot over time is the recip engines are just simple. The Caterpillar guys can come fix them. They're an engine that's been around for years and years, and so it's very easy to operate and maintain. And so that's why a lot of cities are looking at it. Plus they're low cost to go in. You don't need a lot of big stacks. You don't need a big footprint. And the reason that St. George has that down by the river is because when you asked about the neighbors, when you turn that on, you're going to hear a whir coming out of those stacks, because the turbine is a jet engine. And so by using these engines, it's more of a low rumble. It's very not noticeable. It's almost fits in with the cars rolling.
Somebody firing up for big rigs, what it sounds like. Huh?
How much do those 40 megawatt turbine engines cost?
$10.5 million for the first one, and it was about $18 million for the second.
And versus these units that we have are
About
1.5, but we're getting 2 megawatts of power versus 40 megawatts of power.
Yeah.
And we have a future need that's quite. Should we look at that at all? I mean, if we're trying to plan for the future.
No, I would.
Am I just crazy? I'm trying to stay out.
No, let me say we are looking at that, and the reason I say that is because there's what's called the gas project and also resource project that are looking at resources all over the place. And we're looking at base load resource right now. We're looking at peak power needs, and we're looking at the combination. We actually looked at a couple proposals for a 240 megawatt plant located in the Susanville, California area, or down in Brigham City or somewhere in that we might want to participate in. There was also discussion of Eagle Mountain was looking at one. They were a little bigger project than we want to get involved in right now, but they are base load projects. So that's where we got to be careful, is to not buy into a base load
right.
project and have
But
surplus
St. George can
power.
use their turbine to hit peak load, right?
Their peak load.
But sometimes it's
peakers.
favorable for municipality to go in with a proportionate share, so they don't take all the risk.
Right.
Well, and I think with our size and within the window we're looking at, you know, we certainly can't get out 30 and 40 years, but we are looking at those units. And I'm glad you brought that up, Kelly, because I'd forgotten about those. Not necessarily in our city, but we've looked at those
We're
bigger
looking at
units as
them
a
across the
possible
country.
projects with UAMs.
So when you say we, you're talking UAMs?
UAMPS, yes, as a group. We can participate in any one of those projects. We just have to make the commitment, and right now they're study projects.
And we get projects, just so you know, we get projects all the time. We used to not, but we get projects all the time. I would say we're averaging 1 or 2 project presentations a month.
Sure, yeah.
And most of them just don't fit. They just don't fit. They don't make, the numbers don't work. I would say probably UAMPS themselves jettisons off most of them. But even if they are accepted by UAMPS, we've never found one. This is why we're so careful watching San Juan. And San Juan still may work for us or may not work for us.
So how much, given the fact that our city's served by 2 different power companies and most of the growth is in the other one, how much bigger is our city power company gonna need to become? How much more growth can occur within its boundaries?
You can, based on the first draft of the capital facilities plan, we can see, and I'm trying to pull this off the top of my head because I've only read through the draft version. Build out in our city right now, based on the general master plan, can be up to 172 megawatts, I believe.
And that's in our service.
In
That's
our
in
service,
our service
that's just
area.
our service territory.
So for instance, if Washington Parkway builds out commercially and all that, then that would bring a pretty
Starts
good
to
chunk on.
increase pretty good.
Now you see that Deseret Bonanza plant there, if that goes offline in 2017, that's about 45% of Dixie's resource gone. The other 35% would be
Don't they still have,
IPP.
don't they still have hydro too?
Huh?
Do they still get hydro power?
They do have some CRSP, but CRSP is only about 15% of their resource.
And they're already ramping up for that. Councilman Truman brought that up already, and I noticed that too. I went and looked at that after. Yeah, they're already ramping that up.
They had a 10%, 11% increase last. So that's my proposal. I think the timing right now couldn't be any better on doing this as far as Dick said, the cost to build this plant's way down. There's hungry people out there to build it, but most importantly, the financing is in place. If we roll this bond forward and wrap some money around it, we can do it at no impact,
So if we approve it, what's the time frame for, you know, the building has to be designed and then everything
The
from
building's designed. What we're doing is looking at the costs right now of the building.
there?
So, with
So
the
it's
au-
been
with-
designed, we've had an engineer design it and everything?
Yeah,
so we're good
they've
there.
actually designed it at no cost to us because they've done this all over the world.
Okay,
So they're just modifying it to our specifications. You missed the tour, but the Hurricane plant has the warehouse on the left, the generation in the middle, and the office on the right.
okay.
We would do that different. We would move the generation to the left, put the warehouse in the middle, and the office on the right. And that isolates the office from the sound of the vibration of the generators, and they don't have to deal with that.
Okay.
Just a lot of modifications we're making to the drawings.
Okay.
In the tour, if I recall, the radiators and stacks were gonna be on the residential side.
They'll be on both sides.
Be on both sides, so
Both sides.
we can't isolate them to the far side.
No, because you have 3 units on one side and 3 on the other.
But
But-
our initial units,
Yeah, we can put the initial
we're gonna
units
put the
on the south
initial
side.
units, kind of the
On the
break-in period,
On the far
the
side.
initial units will be on the far
But
side.
the other thing is you've got a 30-foot drop in elevation from where those homes are to where the plant will be, and the stacks are only 35, 40 feet. So, you know, the radiators will be way down in the hole.
They're not our
Um,
citizens anyway, right?
What's that?
They're not our citizens anyway.
No, they're Hurricane citizens, but I still care. I'm not like St. George City. I won't just build it and wait for them to complain. I'll
So
make sure.
if we do this, when would construction start? When would we start on it?
As soon as financing is in place. We pull the trigger.
immediately get on it.
In fact, I've got a big bid package right now to have the utilities installed on site, but I put that on hold until I find out whether we actually have a project.
Okay.
And is there any ability to sell off the old yard, or are we gonna get any money out of that one?
Well, you're gonna end up with a frontage road through there, which is gonna take about half of it.
So
And then they'll be
UDOT
left.
does that on our property? Do they pay us like they would a private landowner?
Who?
Or is it our frontage road, or?
It's your frontage road.
So it's our, okay, so we're gonna build a road on our.
But the other problem
we're not.
is you have all your, all your old springs that run through there
Yeah,
that
we'll have
that
to retain
you
it.
could
So
not,
there's
you
not
could not
much we
sell
can
it
do
to a
with that.
private party. But
Can't
there'd
build
still
it.
be another 5 acres usable for
Keep building.
storage or substation, future substation might be required in that area somewhere, it's hard to say. There'll be use for that land though.
So there's no real recovery there.
Yeah, and I think one of the points I was trying to make with my picture slide of the city yard was the fact that we're gonna end up having to move that in the future and it's gonna come at a cost, which means we might have to go borrow the money to do that. And right now is the perfect opportunity where we would have no impact, so.
No, it's a good idea.
Did we address the, we talked about this gentleman here that like to put some units in the proposed building. Have you addressed any terms, what kind of revenue that would mean to the city? Or would that,
It wouldn't be revenue to us, it'd be revenue to them, but the opportunity would be that they would finance the units and then we would buy them back in a set period of time, whether it be 7 years, 10 years, whatever type of contract that we could live with financially.
so we don't take a lease payment from them, we just own the asset at the end
Right,
of a
well, the
certain
lease
number
payment, there would
period,
be some
something
lease
like
dollars
that.
involved there. We've discussed that on a high level, but that's, once we have a project, then we can start drill down into that detail and find out whether we can really make this work or not.
And we have bounced numbers back and
Yeah,
forth.
we've run some numbers back and forth.
So
but-
it wouldn't be starting
So
from
the
scratch.
advantage to them would be that they can sell power on the market. The advantage to us is when they're done doing that, we have some assets that we can retain that are already in place. Is that,
Right,
is
and
that
also,
the idea?
and also we could run those units to our load when they're available.
If we needed to.
Sure,
Because we wouldn't have to pay for any delivery if that were the case.
right,
It's just right on.
right.
So they're essentially just they say there's capacity available here that we can create it.
Right.
We can take an inefficiency and make it more efficient if we come in and partner with you.
Yeah.
And then we have the option at some point to acquire
Dick,
that.
do you want to speak on that a little bit at all?
On which part?
What would be your options to have 3 units sitting there and how might you market those?
The units themselves, whether it's 6 or 8 megawatts, we'll have the ability to go out and look for another like institution like yours to sell that capacity to, or a utility like Pacific Corp may want to buy it, and just so they can have in the non-peak periods, or summer periods, they may want to buy it from us just so they can have the ability to start them anytime they want, because they have a lot of wind and other things on their system. And so really what we have to do going into this is really think about the ability to market the 6 megawatts isn't huge. It's probably on the lower 40% just because of the size of it, but we think there's some niches out there that we could do. And like Kelly said, it kind of allows us to get the units in there for you guys now, and that as the economics and everything work, it's kind of a transition period. And being a commodities company, we do jump into generation, and we like doing it, but we're not long-term asset holders. And so if you guys want to buy us out over time, that's not a big issue for us. We're happy to do that. And so it's really just this kind of transition period and partnership between the two, and finding a balance. And when you guys are ready to do that, and you want those units back, then we just find a way to, in the agreement up front, hopefully we negotiate that. So it's just a transition, and we may end up selling the gas long-term to you guys, or if you guys have a better deal, we can't match that, we're out. And hopefully we've made some good inroads here. Like Kelly said, we've done business with UMEMS and Washington City for a long time, and hopefully there'll be other cities that we may be able to do the same thing, leveraging.
Well, I'd be interested to see what kind of contract you guys could put together. I think that sounds like a really smart idea if we're going to build it and be able to put the units in now and work out an agreement that's beneficial to you and to us long term. That's
Yeah.
kind of the point.
And Dick and I met Friday. Roger was not available, which hurt Dick's feelings a little bit, but
It's been a couple times,
He's
sorry.
gonna have a complex.
But we both kind of agreed that if we can come to some kind of terms in an agreement here, once we see this plan's gonna go, we can put some kind of agreement together that we can both live with. That doesn't mean we have to execute on the spot.
Right.
We could decide, well, let's look at this a year from now, but we have it in place. We can pull the trigger at any time.
We have a pretty good lead time for
Yeah, we got a year lead time on the building and a year lead time on any units that they might purchase and bring in, so.
And you have plenty of funding to be able to self-fund the purchase of these and,
Absolutely. And it fits us really well. I mean, just a little bit of history for us. I worked for Idaho, which is Idaho Power for a lot of years, and then when Idaho exited the business, I went to work for Central Trading, which is the San Diego Gas Electric and SoCal Gas Company out of California. I was there 13 years, and they ended up pulling the company apart. They partnered up with RBS, and you guys know all the financial woes everybody's had. So they basically ripped the company apart and sold the pieces because it was worth more. And the guys that ran Sempra Trading, and most of us though that are employed at Freepoint came from Sempra Trading. We just decided we didn't want to work for the big banks anymore because one day they say we're going to add 1,400 bodies, and 6 months later they go, oh, changed our mind. And so we started our own firm, and so we like the size of these units because we're not at the farm to do this. And so it fits very, very well. It allows us to do some gas deals, do some financing, transition to get you guys what you want, and hopefully, like I said, maybe we find another city or municipality wants to do the same thing. We've got a track record and we can do that. So it just kind of fits really well.
And we've bounced proposals off over the years, and one of them I wish we would have taken advantage of when we were with Sempra, and they made us, we went to Sempra, this was right after the Idaho Power ended, and they made us an offer, and we hesitated on it because of some projects that UAMPS was working on that didn't come to fruition, and then we missed that opportunity, and that was Washington's fault. We bounced ideas back and forth off since then. As a matter of fact, one of our concerns with one of the proposals was RBS, if you remember. We were not comfortable with that partner necessary. That wasn't the main reason, but that was one of the issues we talked about. So one of the things I've appreciated about Dick is that we've talked a lot and had a lot of deals on the table, and we've never really consummated too many of them, but he still is always looking out for the best for us as well, and he knows when they don't work for us, they don't work for us, and he's still sticking there with us, and let's try something else. Let's try something else.
Been doing it a long time, and if I don't find the right product and the things you guys need, it doesn't work for me long term. And that's what I try to do, is build relationships, and that's why I guess I'm still surviving and doing what I'm doing. A lot of other people don't. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for allowing me to take so much time, and I hope you'll consider this as you refinance the bonds.
Now, I will mention, tomorrow you've got your public
Thank
hearing.
you, Kelly.
But it's just your public hearing, so that's all that's on the agenda, and that's just per the timetable. So you still have this opportunity as the bids come back. And we've asked for the bids to come in two ways when we go out to the market and bid on the refinancing, and that is just the bonds itself and the bonds with a wrap.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
All right, we'll move on to item 6, discussion regarding economic development.
Mayor, I want to just take just a minute and just talk about a couple of thoughts that I had, and just maybe have a roundtable discussion with respect to this. And I've talked to the mayor briefly about this, and I know, well, we've talked at length before, but I talked briefly about with the mayor lately. You know, I think there's still some kind of interesting things we can do as a body with regards to economic development, and I just wanted to kind of test the waters with the council to see what your thoughts are. A couple of things, and the first one I want to talk about is a very minimal thing, but it has to do with like the Ray Wright proposal this evening. One of the things that I think we realized, I remember when I started talking with Ray a couple months ago, Mayor's been talking to him over that same period of time. And when I passed him off to Drew, I remember I said to Drew as he left the room, I said, there's not much we can do with that piece of property, Drew, so figure out how it works. And so Drew came back, and I was actually worried about parking. Yeah. And Drew came back and said, hey, he's fine on the parking count. It's just this landscaping, and I quite frankly think that he ought to just go to the council and see if the council would make some consideration here. Well, this brought up a thought, and I just mentioned to Drew, you know, maybe we really ought to look at this downtown a little bit, and we can define what that means. And because of the unique nature of these parcels downtown, I'm not so certain that we may not allow, and I don't know how we do it, whether it be an overlay or just something within the code itself, I don't know, but we allow, when unique circumstances come up like Mr. Wright's circumstance, that we allow them to go right to the elected officials and say, you know, here's the challenge I've got on this particular piece of ground. And then but we already have it in the code, so we don't run into problems as we get out of these areas a little bit too.
See, another parcel that I see is one of those is 300 Eastern Telegraph on the south side.
Yep.
There's a piece of dirt there that could be used, but it has challenges.
It does have challenges, and I think we're gonna find some uniqueness to the downtown properties in a lot of places. So we need to collar it a little bit. I mean, we can't just say, everybody come to us for everything, or you might as well just toss the zoning code out, and that would be just mayhem. But on the other hand, I think your downtown is certainly one, that you have an interest in stimulating, and number two, poses its own unique challenges. And so that's one proposal I would bring to the council with respect to maybe we could start looking at some language that gives you guys more flexibility on what you would like to consider and what you'd be willing to have some flexibility with.
Plus, I think there's a lot of general misunderstanding about the city's approach to downtown right now.
Well, yeah, there probably has been since the original historic zone. It probably created some confusion, and that probably still persists. I probably don't disagree with that.
Bringing it back into the city council.
Sure. The second issue, of course, is a little bit more aggressive, but we certainly have a track record with it in the city, and that is designating tax increment finance zones. And what I'm suggesting with that is, as you know, the Home Depot, Walmart area was all stimulated with tax increment financing. Kohl's was actually stimulated with tax increment financing, although we never ended up paying anything out because of just some brilliant writing in the contract.
They had to fill the whole building, right?
They had to fill
And
all
they
the
didn't do
spaces
that.
within a certain time, or there was no obligation on the part of the city, and they did not do that. That happened.
And they're staying hopefully still.
That was a year and a half ago. We sent them that letter that said under the contract, there's no obligation at this point with Washington City, and we got the return receipt back, but we never even got I would have probably come in and said, okay, I realize I didn't do it all, but what if we negotiate? But there wasn't even that, so we're without obligation with respect to that. But the point is it was initialized with tax increment financing. So I look at this and I say, if the council would, and we do have some language that has been already adopted by the council, but we've not aggressively pursued setting up zones. And that language, and I can get you copies of it, but it talks about number of employees you might hire, amount of sales tax you might bring. There's a couple of criteria with respect to that you could come in. All that does is allows you to come in, go before the elected body and say, I'm bringing in 75 employees, let's use this as an example. I'm bringing in 75 employees, council, and this is what I'm building. Would you work with me on some tax increment financing? The council could say yes or no, and then whatever the terms are. But the third item, I believe it's the third item in that policy that was established by the city council, is the city council could establish TIF zones. And those zones would be basically, if you locate in any of these zones, you have a right to come into the city and request tax increment financing. Now, you'd probably want to have some consistency within the zone, but that would be up to you guys. You don't have to, I suppose. So I guess my second proposal is just to see if the council, how interested the council, and let's just take a couple of pieces of ground and use them as an example. So the downtown area could certainly be one, and let's just say sales tax. That's probably what we have the greatest control over. The property tax is pretty minuscule when you're talking about just the Washington City portion, okay? Because again, that's all we can play with is just our little piece of the pie, and that's pretty small as it is. One of the disadvantages of having one of the lowest property taxes in the county is we don't have much to put on the table if we want to do something with it. Sales tax is really the issue. But let's just say, for instance, I'm just throwing these numbers out just for the fun of it. Let's just say you come in and we say, okay, we're willing to do a tax increment financing for the next 2 years at a 60-40 split on sales tax. Let's just make it 50-50 just for sake of argument. So if it truly is a stimulator to those particular zones, we're certainly collecting 50% of tax that may not have been collected at the moment because nobody is developing, and they of course see some economic development or some economic advantage to wanting to locate there versus maybe another location. And I think the pump is trying to chug forward economically, but I think the pump still needs some priming, and particularly with Washington City, because, I mean, we're getting there, but, you know, we've got, so Washington Parkway, we could still offer this with, even though it's Sitla owned, we can still offer, we can say, hey, for the next couple of years, we're willing to consider this area a TIF section. And we can either determine up front what that means, or we can just say, you can bring in your proposal and pitch it to us. But after 2 years, we would consider that the market's good enough going that we don't, may pull this off the table. I just don't see, there's some legal procedures we'd have to go through when they come in and propose it. There's some statute language that we'd have to go through, but we've gone through it before, and not a high bar that we'd have to jump over. But so that's the issue. The second proposal is how interested the council might be in the establishment of TIF zones within the city.
Let's say yes on all three. Get them started and give them to us.
I can let you know that in my visits with people that have come down, and one that's come down about 3 times now, that's one of his first questions. Are there any tax incentives or any breaks for a business to come in? And so
I think the TIF stuff makes a lot of sense to me, especially when we've got some areas that, well, 1, aren't attracting any interest, and 2, struggle to keep good interest. And so, I mean, I think that makes sense that on that front. I would agree that the zoning needs to be looked at regardless, really, and I think we could improve that.
See, and when I look at the downtown area, I mean, I think the TIF approach is maybe more attractive up off exit 13. But on the downtown, you look at the parcels, a lot of the parcels are just like the one we looked at, maybe a little bit bigger, but there are only limited number of businesses that come in there. And I look at that stretch from 300 West to 300 East, that historic area. I look at that not as much as, hey, we're gonna generate all kinds of sales tax revenue.
That's right.
But I look at that more along the lines of, we wanna support some of these smaller business, mostly for community feel, and for just appeal to the type of community we are. So if there's incentives with TIF, if there are other things to look at that make it easy to do business, but in trade-off for that, I would like them to build out with those designs that we've looked at, with those early Mormon pioneer designs, to say, hey, we're gonna give some concessions, maybe in sales tax or other rates or fees or areas, because we want you here, but in trade-off, we'd like to see you adopt this type of style in your build out. And it may not take very many buildings for this to become, between private and city work, a pretty nice stretch.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, the third issue, which is a little bit more nebulous, if you will, and so, you know, whatever your thoughts are on this, is I've had the opportunity to meet with a couple of companies that have kind of really are small tech firms. And when I say small, I'm talking probably 20 employees or less, but they have incomes of $2 and $3 million. And we're starting to see in Southwest Utah a lot of those types of products.
Dixie type stuff?
Yeah, those types of products growing. And one of the interesting things is I was meeting with one of them, I just thought, wouldn't that be an interesting niche? I mean, that's not a sales tax producer for Washington City, but they have huge spin-off effects if you start to establish some sort of a core density of those. I mean, you almost become, you know, so we kind of almost become the Southwest Utah kind of Silicon Valley of those small, less than 20 employees. And what that requires, of course, and the only reason I bounce that off is because that's a different approach. That's a community that says, you know what, we would like to niche ourselves. So that's not so much a TIF issue as much it is, if we're going to niche ourselves a certain direction, what do we have to put in place to attract that? So the discussions we've had with interlinks and those type of things, with the fiber and those type of things, those would be commitments that it would kind of focus our efforts on what kind of community we would like to see us become with regards to even those types of businesses. And then we push our efforts that way. So negotiating with the Baja, I met with Baja last week and asked them, tell me about your upload stuff. Where are we at in Washington with upload stuff? It's not so much download with these organizations, it's upload. And of course he's talking, just so you know, Baja's being bought. And that's very common in this business. It happens about every half a dozen years. And so that'll come before you, that assumption agreement, in the next couple months probably. But, you know, interlinks and those type of people, do we put some effort to try to generate those maybe in certain areas and that, so that we can start to niche ourselves? I look at the relationship that WordPerfect had with Orem City, and I watched this and watched what happened and how that relationship almost started to define who Orem was. And then for as long as, and the relationship was great, it was and for as long as WordPerfect was WordPerfect till they sold to Corel, they committed to Orem City, and they committed not just that, but Orem City started to get this kind of reputation, and more firms were drawn to it. And then the spin-off effects from those firms. Anyway, it was interesting talking to these young men who have made really great strides with some great products from a technology standpoint, and talking to people who know this, and I don't. Talking to people who know this, Southwest Utah really is starting to attract some of those families and individuals that are generating those types of businesses. That's just kind of more of a nebulous, kind of a more theoretical discussion.
Yeah, I actually like the nebulous. Maybe we can change from telemarketing fraud capital
That'd be great.
nation to
That'd be great.
something legitimate. But no, in seriousness, to focus on that, you look at Flash Drive up there towards Alpine, you know. Focus on an industry that's going to bring a high volume of cash
Exactly.
without a big dent in the, you know, we don't want more box stores. Let's get something that's going to bring a lot of revenue for a small space.
Well, you're exactly right. It's a
High-tech.
different revenue source for us, and you can't look at it directly like a retail, because retail, you know, they're handing us money at the door. And these types of businesses don't. But the spin-off effects of these businesses are fantastic. They have a very little dent. I like that term. They have a very little dent. And I think years ago, I'll tell you what happened years ago. Years ago, we really tried to make a little concerted effort. This was at the time that St. George and Dixie College was not necessarily getting along all that well, and there was some land space problems and that. And we approached Dixie College and said, why don't you consider moving your applied technology stuff over to Washington? You know, we know you're not going to move your college, but what about applied technology? That seems to be where you have the pinch, and maybe we can help partner up with Sitla and others to try to get lands available for applied technology. It didn't work out, but we tried, because I thought that'd be a nice connection for Washington to have with the college as well. But I'll tell you, these individuals I talked to just said, you know, we're just really looking for a home that we feel like is truly a home down here. And these guys are successful. I mean, these guys are 15 people and pulling down $2.5 million a year in their company that's just sitting there programming all day.
Right. They don't need a ton of space. They just need a.
But they spend their money.
But they spend their money and they make good money.
We gotta have the stuff, we gotta have.
Yeah,
we gotta have stuff
one
in
of
the
my-
pipeline for-
That's why that would be
My
more
own-
of a,
my-
this is where we want to go, so now we start putting our efforts into
My
focusing.
only concern with any kind of incentives is making sure that we're covered on the back end. I can't tell you how many articles I read in the last 4 years of businesses who had some sort of incentive and
Yeah.
it never paid off, but they got all the money.
Well,
That's
here's,
why it's nice that's why it's nice to tie it to something
Sells.
that otherwise you wouldn't have, a tax. So when you do the property tax increase, it's always based on what that increase should have been, and everybody isn't gonna take it for a while. So you're not really losing anything.
Right.
On the
And
front
I
end.
understand that.
And
I
that's
just want to
why-
make sure that and fundamentally, I understand it. I agree with it to a certain extent, as long as we make sure that there's no negative, that we cover ourselves for any negative
no, I
effects.
think, and you're right, the issue, the way I like both agreements, the way they were written with both the Walmart area and the Kohl's area, and I would do this differently, of course, but I would almost, depending on what the extent we wanted to do of this, let's say it's 2 years, I would base it upon quarterly collections. So as the quarterly collections come in, if the percentage was already prearranged, they get that portion. So if so they have an incentive to do as well as they can, because they're going to push more back into that. And also, it is not on the back. It is not an upfronting. We're not upfronting, and we neither did we do that, as you know,
Right.
Because obvious reasons, with the Kohl's and the Walmart area. There was a little bit on the Walmart with some infrastructure. Let me take that back. We did a little bit of infrastructure, but
But that's when you do it, but you're right, that's when you start out in risk.
Yeah.
When you're starting to put out the services or the money to get them there, and then it may not come through, that's when you
Well,
have all,
there's
that's
a
when
there's a
you're carrying
huge
that
huge
risk.
famous one right now, because Kurt Schilling started a software company in Connecticut, and they
Yeah.
gave him you know, it was hundreds of millions of dollars, and now it's bankrupt, and they don't have any jobs out of it.
Well, it's interesting, I was talking to the city manager of Spanish Fork, they've got a Costco coming in there. And I said to him, I said, oh my word, you know, you died and gone to heaven.
Right.
And he said, not with the birthright I had to give up.
Right.
And I said, oh, come on, it couldn't, you know that what they generate. And he said, you did not see what we gave up. He said, I am not sure we will ever get it paid back. And they did it in power rate deductions, they did it in
Well, they were
in
competing with
tax
other
issues.
cities
Springville.
right there. Yeah.
right.
Springville they were competing with, and he feels that the euphoria got too out of control and that they gave way too much. Now, will my suggestion attract the Costco's? Probably not. I mean, let's be honest about that. They're going to be going in there and knuckling pretty hardball and saying, oh no, you're gonna put in this infrastructure, you're gonna do this. But to me, it's just nothing, again, I'm looking at nothing more than a pump priming.
So, what's the program that the county does? Economic Development
Yeah.
Council. They're all about value-added
That's
businesses.
right, that's the problem.
And so, well, that's what this is. That's what the software comes.
Software definitely fits their criteria.
And
We
so,
know retail
how do
doesn't.
we partner with them more?
Well, I think we can. It was kind of tonight's really just to kind of explore from you guys if you are interested in that, and if you are, then we'll start putting some meat around this and bring it back and
I think
say,
we're totally behind it. I think anything we can do that adds value to our community.
and the small niche.
And especially, you know, we look at these pictures downtown. He talks about this you know, this landscaping strip. You drive down Telegraph with the businesses that are there. Most of them don't have a landscape strip because it was taken away with the widening anyway. So for me, that is, well, let's just go and let's look at specifically businesses right along Telegraph. Let's fix that immediately. Make it so this guy doesn't have to come to us to
Well,
get
there's
that
not very
fixed.
many lots left.
No, there isn't.
I mean,
And so, and hopefully some will redevelop too.
well, but
Which
maybe
again,
but
still
maybe there
puts
can
you
be
in.
some incentive for that.
Well,
There's a give
even
and
the
a take.
flexibility is an incentive still on a redevelopment. We know that. But on the small tech niche, the reason I wanted to just even float that over you and see if you even had a feeling of that, because if that is something you say, yes, that is a niche that we're interested in, that particular one, then we would want to incorporate, for instance, one of the things we'd want to do, which Washington City is very short of, is to build these kind of business plazas where the tech firms can go
Well,
in.
those tech firms are going over to the Tonnequin Center because of the
Right.
data facility.
That's right.
And the
So how do
fiber
we
connections that are
incentivize a
over there.
developer? So if that's what you say, yes, that's what we want, then our next step is to say, okay, how do we incentivize a developer to
And where would
consider
we put
putting that? Because that's step one. Or not step one, but one of the first steps. They need a place to call home. Then, of course, we need to work with the interlinks, and we need to do that. But it concentrates our efforts on what you feel is a good niche for us to pursue, because I think shotgunning gives you what shotgunning does, and
I like the idea of like the tech firms. The problem is to get the infrastructure in place to make that happen. For what the Tonnequin Center has gone through to put that in, they had private developer go in there and put in that partnership with Interlinks and build that facility over there. It's been a long time coming,
what has, and
and it's expensive.
it is, and that's why, again, we would start to put those efforts in. So this is not a turnkey issue, but this is something, just like with Orem. They plodded along with this concept, and it really paid off really well. Well, Orem went so far, I'll tell you what Orem did that was funny, is when WordPerfect first started developing, they needed a mainframe. Orem let them use their mainframe at night.
Wow.
This is when it had consisted of 6 people. And WordPerfect never forgot that. Orem City never paid for one piece of software. They agreed that they'd build their facilities, their campus there, which still is, you know, even though it's not WordPerfect, it's still used to this day. Beautiful campus. And so I just, so those are the things I wanted to float. Now, one of the comments I'd ask, though, is if you like the zonal stuff and we can get you more information, do you have any thoughts on where you would like to see some of the zonal TIF discussions?
I gotta tell you, I got my gut aches every time I see Weekend come in, and you can't drive down our streets anywhere, and then I drive past Restaurant Row, and it's packed, and you just know the kind of sales tax money that's going through just those restaurants, those little stores, and I just think, man, 13 out there looking. Even if it's not, I mean, just for the restaurants, it would be lovely to have people spending the night out here, but spending at least their restaurant money there. I mean, they don't have to be big boxes. just the restaurant money, instead of it all floating right down to there. We have the senior games come to the community center. They don't go to the restaurants here. You drive right down the road, pack our streets up, and then go buy, you know, the steaks down at their places. And it hurts when you see that almost. So to me, it seems, I don't know how we get, again, we have to work with Sitla every time on this, and sometimes their criteria is a little different than ours, but it just seems like it'd be nice to get people to locate there. If they just need the nudge, if it's just the nudge. 'Cause
Right.
we don't have the money to throw on the table.
The good thing is what we're
All we
hearing
have
from
is that.
Sitla is that they're in a
they're
perfect
getting
position
ready.
right now because they've got some cash issues.
Yeah.
So they need to get some property
They need to
sold
get some
off.
And
to
I'm
get some-
glad to see it, if you want
Unloaded.
my honest opinion, because they're now gonna have to start kind of functioning like a normal person in the marketplace. And I think that we're hearing from a couple of fronts,
Yeah.
because of some commitment to Miners Hospital and some things that they have not fulfilled those commitments, that they have a cash. When we talked to them about the Coral Canyon shortfall, they were very appreciative of us doing what we did to push that off, because they explained the whole Miners Hospital problem with them as far as cash flow. And I've noticed that there's some notices of sale on some lands out there, and that's what we're hearing as well, is they're starting to really push, that they're ready to start doing a lot of deals because they need to start generating something.
Well, the one area that I think for the TIF is definitely exit 13.
Exit 13.
Main Street.
I don't know what commercial space is out towards Coral Canyon.
You've got a lot along Telegraph,
Telegraph.
Telegraph.
like
to the
East
right.
Telegraph.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
talk about
You've got,
past 300 West.
you've
Yeah.
got the
Or
Mill Creek
300 East.
parcel over there, the Buena Vista from essentially the Green Springs down to Mill Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought about
Or
the
down
Buena
to
Vista
Main
area
Street.
too.
I think even 100 north to 100 south across Telegraph might be worth thinking about.
When you say at 13 exit, you're talking about the whole parkway down, right? 'Cause I mean, that's just.
Oh, and the
that's just
north
one-
side.
I mean, 'cause that's the one place where we still have, you still could just develop it all
A lot of good
and fill it all in on both sides.
Even Buena Vista Boulevard. I mean, I know,
That's the one I
I
was
know,
thinking.
I know we're
That's-
looking at a project there with the,
Ecosium?
with.
Yeah,
thank you.
Ecosium. Ecosium,
Thank
sorry.
you. I was gonna say columbarium. I'm just teasing. Totally teasing. I wasn't gonna say that, but that was another new word I learned.
Well, let me start with these, but what I'd like to do now, just based upon this, is let us put some meat into this and bring it back to the council and have you help us flesh this through a little bit. That's all I had on that, Mayor.
Okay.
Thanks, Roger. Item 7, discussion regarding the capital budget and proposed rate changes for 2014. Kimberly?
Now, Kimberly's document basically said there were none. Is that accurate?
I didn't see a document.
There was something. What was it I saw?
So the rates are
Capital
going
budget
down.
document.
we
Yeah,
just need
the
approval.
I guess I just looked at the executive summary, is what I looked at.
Not applicable.
There's
Now, while
no-
she's handing this out, let me tell you what our objectives are tonight, so you're comfortable with this. We also anticipate we can have a discussion with regards to this on the 26th, that's 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay.
And so, I'd like Kimberly to explain for sure this evening how these, what we call cash flow worksheets work. And then, you have several of the department heads here this evening too, so if you have any questions on but Kimberly, let's start with you just kind of walking through one complete cash flow worksheet so they understand every line and what it means to us. This is a great spreadsheet that Brian created for us. This is what he does for fun.
What does he do for work if he does this for fun?
I don't want to know.
It is fun.
Ugh.
So yes, this is a cash flow worksheet that Brian actually built for us last year. And then the data that comes in, we have Carrie Wheelwright that does some revenue projections for us. And then the department heads add their capital, and we look at their expenses, and just kind of helps us know what kind of funding we have available going forward for the next, we try to look at about a 5-year
Kimberly,
term.
can you expand that to the full screen so?
If I, Not with, I don't know how, I guess.
Okay.
I could drag it, but it's not gonna make it any bigger.
All
See,
right,
it's just
that's
gonna make
okay.
it
I just
wider.
didn't know how easy it was for others.
Recs don't have that capability, huh?
So,
Well, Brian,
I'm
may,
not-
Kimberly does not.
I don't have that capability.
Go to view and
Sorry.
zoom.
So, yeah, let's see it, maybe,
My PC could do it.
no, see, I don't know how to do it.
There's just a little box up in the right corner on my PC.
The big box, the little box. That's right.
Okay, so the first section up here is where they actually list their capital projects that they have by year. And we break it out between impact fee eligible projects and non-impact fee eligible projects. So the first section would be if any of the projects, and sometimes you'll have a single project that could be listed in both places, and it could have partial funding sources where some of it would be eligible for use from impact fees. So for the power department, then, the 3 projects that Kelly has listed are the Green Springs transmission, the Green Springs substation, and the city yard warehouse and generation building. And all of these items would be capital improvements that would be eligible for impact fees based on his capital facilities plan that I believe he's gonna be updating in the course of this next year. And then the bottom half is where we start to look at funding sources that would be available. So in this section, I'm gonna kind of highlight it a different color. Okay, so the section up here that I highlighted, this is looking at the funding sources that are non-impact fees. And so what we look at is basically their money that would be available from prior years, their fund equity. And then we look at their operational revenue and their operational expense and any debt service that they have. And then it would pull down capital projects from the upper list that would be funded out of these sources. So for Kelly's, none of them on row 30, which I guess you don't have a row number, but there's none of them listed because his are gonna be all impact fee eligible. So then the next section.
Is there a certain, and I don't want to interrupt, but is there a certain balance that we want to maintain in the power fund? Because I know that it looks like everything that they're proposing is financed through impact fees, but is there like a rule of thumb as to how much you keep as your
fund balance.
balance, as your fund balance?
With your enterprise funds, there's a portion that we look at each year that's related to debt, to depreciation costs. So for the power department alone, their depreciation costs in a single year are probably gonna be over $1 million in depreciation costs. So we don't typically outright fund depreciation, but you wanna have enough margins left that as those items are depreciating, you'd be able to go in and do repairs to your system. So Kelly doesn't have any repairs listed, and I don't know what his 5-year plans are
Oh, gotcha.
for existing. So your existing infrastructure, you're not allowed to use impact fees or anything like that.
So
these
that's why you want to
unrestricted
keep
funds
fund
would be
balance, because
used-
I was looking at it like the fund balance ought to be at least at a certain level, because you almost want to be,
I just wanted to
you
touch-
don't want to overcharge the rate either.
I just wanted to touch on what she just commented on, and that is we're currently in the capital facilities plan renewal, and we do it every 5 years. And I didn't want to get into a lot of detail here because I haven't seen all the detail that's going in the new plan. So I just kind of left this sit idle
Gotcha,
rather
okay.
than load it out with things that need to be done, for my guesstimation.
But there would be
engineering
other
staff.
costs associated with this balance that's
Yeah.
trending.
This is all going to change in the next capital
Okay.
facilities plan.
And there's 2 ways to do that. You can either fund your depreciation, or you can have a capital or a capital improvement plan, like we do.
Like a repair and
That's what
replacement.
we do. What's,
Repair and replacement for his specific
Yeah, repair and
existing. And he does, the power department does have a risk management policy. I think you guys approved it in 2011 that sets some parameters for some fund balance limitations that we wanted to basically have committed towards rate stabilization,
resource acquisition.
and basically repair and replacement. And so each year, we look at his net margins, and a percentage of those move over and become committed funds that so the balance that we have has already been pulled out of this because it would be restricted for those purposes already based on his policy. So we
But
don't-
before you leave that, I do want to point that out. One item that we talked about today that we are going to add to this list, because it is going to reduce your fund balance totals, is a depreciation line. And that you're not seeing. So you're going to look at some of these and say, well, geez, that's a pretty healthy fund balance, but the fact of the matter is and we still
So,
pull.
but you're saying though, as that asset depreciates over time, we're gonna have to use some of these dollars to go in
Correct.
and,
And that's where the
upgrade the system.
depreciation formula comes into
okay,
play.
and that's just not accounted for.
It's not on here,
Okay.
but it happens every year in our
So you
audit.
see it in the year-end financial statements.
Well, I didn't want to get you off subject, but
That's
sorry,
okay. No,
I'm a
please
little
ask.
bit new to some of these things still, so I'm asking.
Well, what Kimberly is going to say is oftentimes you'll see our year-end financial, and then you'll see our audited financials, and they're lower because they've added those depreciation. Well, and they've moved some other things, but depreciation is a big part of that.
Okay, and then, so then we look at the impact fee monies that are available. So the power department doesn't have any running impact fee funds. The money that we collect each year, right now is used to offset his debt service payments. And so his, which I didn't print off on your sheet, the detail, but it does, his debt service payment is broke out between impact fee and non-impact fee, only for the purpose of that we don't have enough impact fee monies that come in every year to cover it. And so it's pulled out of his operational expenses.
Remember when we borrow funds sometimes to build something, and to go back to what Kimberly talked about, we sometimes, when we build a new facility, we still have to consider an existing capacity factor, which is non-impact fee eligible. So even though you borrow the money, that has to be paid from operational expenses.
And then basically the very bottom, that I think on most of your sheets it carries over to the second page, there's a section that's called alternative funding sources. So what we've kind of asked the department heads is if they don't have enough money available in either their impact fees or their fund equity, how were they planning on financing these projects? So if they knew that they were anticipating a bond, then they might list that on there. Any federal aid, state aid, grants, or if they were looking for surplus consideration from the general fund or other, which other means at this point we haven't determined the source of funding.
Oftentimes, that's very common when you're looking at 3, 4, 5 years out. The funding source is not, but yet we feel the facilities or the investment still needs to be made, and so that just needs to be tightened up as that horizon gets closer and closer. So one of the things we would like the council to take some time with between now and our next work session is, number one, look at the projects and look at the years those projects are in. Particularly pay attention, of course, to 2014, which is the budget year that we're working on right now. And if you have some concerns with those or questions, we can answer those either between now and then or next time. So that's important. And then the rest of it just is the math to see how it all would work.
I don't know if you guys wanted me to go through each one that we have outlined so you can look at it tonight, or if you'd like to.
I think I want some time to
Review
go
it.
through it myself.
I would like to point out a couple of things, though. One of the things we did
I need a
do,
Pepsi or two while I go through this, so
I want to point out a couple of things while you're thinking about it.
I'm teasing.
First of all, we've separated fire
You
and
want a Dr.
last year we did, we could, I don't know if that's in the budget.
Drink a Pepsi.
Last year we had public safety all as one. This year the capital budgets are split up as fire and police. So those are separate capital worksheets. I would point that out from the fire standpoint. On the police one, which is right after fire, your big expense in the police department, which is a big need for us, is we actually have the need now, and I'm only bringing it to your attention because I do want you to mull over it. We need a police station. We're already at this busting at the seams, and we know we're going to probably be 2 or 3 years into this.
Let's get them like a portable like a portable
Oh,
classroom.
Like an
or
yes,
something.
RV?
like the
You could do a
school. No, like the
complex of
schools, you
portables.
know, you get
Oh,
a
yeah.
problem,
Complex of
set it out
portables
in
right
the
there.
Some portable
parking lot.
units.
We got a city yard up there.
Can you imagine what Mayor Clove would think if we put portable units out here?
Well,
Put
we're
him
gonna
right over.
move the electrical yard. We have some room up there, we could put some portables. Perfect.
Let me,
But we will bring fiber optic lines.
We'll get some fiber optic lines to them though.
one of the things that I met with today, I met with the CIB, which is Community Impact Board, and they have funds available, and we actually was gonna borrow money from them. They do not grant, because we're a mineral poor county. All their money comes from the mineral lease funds from the feds, but we're a mineral poor county, not like a Carbon County or Emory or those places, but, so they do loans, but very few grants. We tried to get a CIB loan a couple years ago. Well, we actually was awarded a CIB loan a couple years ago on the Telegraph project for our portion. The interest rate was 2.5%, but we got a better deal out in the market, so we withdrew. We thanked them and told them we weren't gonna do it. They've now dropped their loan amounts to 1.5, which is gonna be very difficult probably to find a competing bid if we do need to borrow money for things like this, less than that, especially for the term. You can find some short-term financing, maybe bridge loaning and that for 4 or 5 years for maybe 1.5% with municipalities, but you're not gonna find 20 to 30-year financing at 1.5%. But here's the thing I like about CIB. They still offer a 50% grant for design and architectural work. So if you'll see in 2014, we've set aside $75,000 for design and architectural work, and we would apply to CIB for that, because let's say the total cost is 75, that's kind of what we figured. We would get 37.5 in grant, that's non-payback, from them.
Nice.
And so that's a good deal. And then, of course, we would want to look, if we ever wanted to bond for the rest, we'd still want to look at CIB. But I do need you to think about police station,
So
because
we do receive impact fees for fire, but not for police.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilman, because that's one other thing I want you to think about. One of the things that we would recommend is we would recommend that the current capital facilities plan, which is very specific in fire, it has to do with our two buildings, that's it. It doesn't expand beyond that. We would request that the council, if the council says, yes, we do need a police station, we do want to move forward that direction, we would recommend a capital facilities study for the police station with a recommendation of an expanded impact fee. Now, along with that, because now I've given you the heartburn, let me tell you what I would also recommend at that point. That depending on how the capital facility plan comes back, and we got to do the math on this, but if the capital facilities came back, and let's just use an example of $1,000 a permit. Right now it's 200?
200 for fire.
$200 a permit. It's probably costs more to collect than it does generate, but let's say it comes back as $1,000 a permit. I would actually suggest that one of the options we could do to keep the impact fees neutral is you could look at something, for instance, like the parks. Because we have built the parks to a certain level. We could probably, remember they're $4,000 a permit. And that would probably be, I just bounced that off Barry to already get Barry to kind of go throw up in the back of the building already and then come back in, but.
Yeah, he's gonna have to learn to function on less.
But you know, I think we brought ourselves at least to a certain level with our parks, that maybe there's some give there. And we wouldn't have to, Barry is gonna redo his capital facilities plan, because it's outdated now too. He's actually planning on doing that relatively soon. But again, it's the council that can set.
Do we redo those?
Well, we used to do them when the change was happening often, but probably about every 5 years
So
now.
we could scale back parks for 5 years and push that to another place that we thought needed 5 years.
Yeah, the only.
Another 5 years, you kind of look at it again.
You
right?
can, and remember, the condition with an impact fee is you as a legislative body cannot impose anything beyond what the maximum impact fee is, but you can always impose less, and that's what you've done. As a matter of fact, we chuckle because the parking impact fee, I think, was like $7,000 per permit, and of course, the council said, well, we're not doing $7,000 per permit, so they cut it back. I think Mike's has been cut back from what was proposed. I think Kelly's has been cut back.
That look on his face.
The only thing with parks that you'd want to keep in mind is we have $600,000 a year in
Correct.
debt service that is paid for out of park impact fees that roll in every
Well, and the other thing I'd suggest too is we want to really look at the Sullivan Park. We don't want to hang the Sullivan Park up for 10 years before it gets grass out there. I think that there's a commitment there. I think we need to try to figure out how we can get that Sullivan Park
Baseball
completed.
field.
Yes, there are some additional things though. This is why I suggest we do the math. But I guess what I'm saying here is if we think that there's very little funds, parks and public safety find themselves in the exact same boat. Very little money out there for them to get. Because of that, we may have to kind of do some trade-offs a little bit between those on the impact fees. And again, the impact will tell us what the maximum on the police department would be. It'd still be a public safety impact fee, so I'd include fire and police into that.
But right now, it's specifically a fire impact.
Right now, it's specifically a fire. I will tell you, our greatest infrastructure needs right now is a police station.
Well, I got good news for you. We're looking to acquire a few acres, nice hillside property right near current problem, and I think that'd be a great way to respond to some of the citizens' concerns and build them a police department right there.
That'll be some interesting architecture.
Carving of the hill,
Where's this at?
it's inside of Schnell guy.
He's trying to, you gotta understand, Councilman Segmiller is trying to preserve the garden. That's exactly what's happening.
Trying to solve a problem that you've been getting a few
Well,
emails about.
I'll tell you
Rooftop garden.
a couple of construction thoughts with respect to this. This building, of course, was built with the idea that you could duplicate this building on the other side. That would be something we would look at, because you'd get some economies there. Or, again, we've always looked at these parcels here as being an option as well, and that was what we would look at as well. But if we could duplicate, for instance, legitimately, move the parking up over to here, I still think, as a matter of fact, you'd still preserve some of that up the front, but we'd have to just have an architect determine what the costs of that sort of issue was.
What other properties do we own that might be possibilities? Don't we own some stuff on the north side of the freeway?
Well, the Buena Vista property is the only, we own the Buena Vista, and we own some up near the radio station. Those
By
would-
the radio tower,
Yeah,
right?
we own the radio towers
How much
area.
space over there?
About 10 acres. It's about 10 acres.
Yeah, I think we've got room up there. It's always my objective is that we could focus or kind of concentrate
Keep
our
everybody close
services a
together.
little bit. And I would love if we bought this building for $800,000. Now, certainly we could put that on the market, and that could be money that goes to it too, but we're gonna need room in the future, so I would love if there was any possible way to hold on to that building. You could move an IT or a community development or something over there as well. Because this building, we're done with this building. It's filled.
That was a great purchase at the time, too.
Well, unless you build a police station with a courthouse, and then you have that whole area upstairs.
Yeah, and we've talked about that as well. We
Looking
just,
for a use for the Covington home. We could
That's
the only reason we backed a little away,
Holy moly. Mayor?
the only reason we backed a little away from the courthouse at the moment, Councilman, is just to try to keep the cost down and not build something we already had.
I guess as far as the need for a new police station and a $3 million police station, I assume Keith at some point will give us all the factors to support.
Yeah, I think it's, right now, our biggest issue is we can't store evidence. We're running out of evidence room. Some of that needs to be more controlled than going down to Turner's and putting it in a storage unit. We're growing as a police department. We actually haven't kept up to pace in the police department, but we're growing as a police department, so just simply space. We're not looking at really holding facilities per se. We don't like that, but you gotta have interview rooms,
Yeah.
those type of
I guess
things.
that's my concern, it's kind of like that, build it and they will come. We expand the police station, then we'll have more criminals, more quotas, then we'll need more holding spaces.
Well, no, I'm not-
more courthouse rooms.
Yeah, I've never seen the statistics that the size of the police department determines the amount of crime in the community. I think it's actually the amount of crime in the community determines how many policemen you're gonna have, and you need to house them. This building we knew would have a limited tenure to it when we bought it. It's not actually even well functioned up there. I went up there the other day, and they've got a lady, it was a terrible experience. I walked into their lobby and they're interviewing some abused woman in the lobby there because they don't have the space to put them and have those types of confidential issues. This has got some technical challenges as a building too. So I think the reality is if the police business is the business we're in, we're going to have to find a facility that accommodates them.
Has anybody thought, you know, we talk about fire and police services, about private contracting those services out versus building all this infrastructure? Have we looked at that?
The only private services you'd contract police services out with the county, and that's where we came from. In 2006, the council said we're not getting service. Our response times were anywhere from 15 to 40 minutes. And they said, we're not going to do that anymore. The service is hurt, and we're going to bring our own police department. And that's your only options on contracting out on police.
Yeah, that went through a lot of public, were you not here then?
No.
Man,
Yeah, it was a big
seems
deal.
like you've been here forever. Well, not forever, obviously, but, yeah, they went through a long process, because we were on the last holdouts on having that county contract, and man, I'm just telling you, the citizens moved that one just because the feel was, they got county out here, you know, we were third on the line of whatever priority came up, and they got out here now and again. To have a citizen come in and say, you know what, I think you gotta post some guys down by my street because they're speeding a lot, that wasn't even a possibility. They would say, you know, we just got robbed 3 times last week. You think somebody could show up now and again?
Well, when I
I'll
met-
go over a comparison like that. back
Has
then.
St. George recently started contracting with the county? I've seen sheriffs, the other night there were 6 or 8 sheriff's vehicles that in and out, and I've seen them all along.
Well, I'm not sure that has anything to do with a contract. But they'll
They just
support
like
us.
to
They'll
go to
back
dinner
us
together.
up, as we know.
The sheriffs have been making stops along that Red Cliffs Parkway up there.
Well, and they can. They can make the stops even within our own community. And
They're always stopped at the Maverick, if you ever want to know.
But
Thought it
when,
was Hearts.
when we initially looked at
Highway
this, because,
control,
interesting, Councilman, when I got in, that was the very first issue the council tasked me with, is you will determine if we need to have our own police department, because this is a big thing. The very first thing I did was meet with Sheriff Smith and say, what can we do to expand our services? And his comment was, you've outgrown us. I'd recommend you go on your own because we can't service you. And so we.
And the field was really problematic.
The fields was
That was
problematic.
a long way to get the county out the field, because you get some crime rate.
That's why it grew so well out there.
No cops.
Well, you should have seen it before, yeah.
I only bounce that off the council because this is just one of those things that needs to be looked at as a council in a city that provides police services as facilities. You know, preserving evidence, you know, things like that, bringing cars in and being able to process them and those type of things. And I think that we would certainly, just because resources would limit what we could really do, and we'd be very frugal, but I think we know we're on borrowed time. We're already past borrowed time on this one over here.
Just quickly going through this.
Yeah, that's all, really the ones I wanted to hit on more than anything.
What's the purpose of a new sewer department building? Is that more of a warehouse facility?
Yeah, well, we
'Cause
have no,
I think Mike has space up there.
well, we have no sewer building out there, so it's already in the yard. It's out, existing yard, just building a building for them.
So just a space to store trucks and things like that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Our sewer cleaner trucks, we do have the new one this year, plus the old one we're keeping, plus we have our street sweeper. All those have to be indoors because all the water they have. So during the winter months, they'll freeze. So
Okay.
they have to be stored indoors. And right now, I have one vehicle that'll have to stay outside.
When we toured that Hurricane facility, they showed us that they're able to park all their powered vehicles indoors, and one of the guys was talking about all the savings just in being able to house a vehicle indoors on those type of expensive ones.
Yeah, and the only ones that we house indoors are those 3 trucks where they have to be
Pulling those
out of
ones
the freezing weather.
Out of the freezing and out of the sun and the air and everything, just makes a big difference on, keep costs.
You can see where many of our proprietary funds are in very good shape as far as capital investments, meaning that they can carry themselves either through impact fees or operational fees. And this is important to us, that things that are impact fee eligible not be paid with operational. Now, that's an equity issue. So council, you can tell me if you agree with me or not, but it's an equity issue. What you're saying is if you choose to build a facility that's going to go into the future and help an expanded population, if you choose to pay for it out of operational expenses, what you're saying is that those people the people who live in Washington City now will pay for all of it, and none of the people who come in the future will pay for any of that.
So like in our parks, our debt service that's paid with impact fees, is that our community, that's the community center?
It's
That's
the
it.
community center
And the
and
sales
the
tax
Pine
bond.
View Estates Park has
Yeah.
a bond on it still.
Okay.
So those are the only ones. I just wanted to point those out. So at least from that point of view, I just wanted to point those out, those items out.
And I've got a question just let's just go back to the first page, just to help me understand how the math works on these. If we take, where it comes down, it says estimated ending balance impact fees, and then it says estimated available for appropriation, $2,292,855.
Okay.
Then in year 14, it's got a negative 1,500 balance, and that figure only drops to 1,690,000. There's, what are we doing there with those numbers?
Okay. So the estimated available for appropriations line, the one that has the $2,292,855. This balance is made up of the ending unrestricted, okay,
So you're actually adding in, even though these are compact capital impact fee items, you're adding in the stuff that's not
it's
for
basically
the-
a running total. So the upper line estimated, you can see the ending balance that's available of only unrestricted monies. And then you can, the negative $250,000 is that ending balance for that year of impact fees only. And then the row underneath where it says estimated available would be the sum of those two totals.
Okay, but I guess where my confusion comes in is we're not using the unrestricted funds for the impact capital funded improvements, but yet we're showing those figures as if
That
it's
would be the
included.
council's choice. So what we're doing is showing you the money that's available, but you could choose to use unrestricted monies to fund these projects if you wanted to use operational.
And that was the point I
So
just
spend
made.
all the
Yeah.
money.
It's a
We wanna let
policy
you be
choice on whether
aware.
you want existing residents to pay for future facilities or do it in an impact fee way. But also be careful, Councilman, because we sometimes are just using the totals in the roll. Be careful to try to wrap some of those. Some of those don't wrap. Okay, so for instance, we're showing you totals as they come down the column. Sorry, I said row. As they come down the column, and so if you think, well, how come that's not wrapping up to the available funds for the next year? We don't always wrap those.
So how do we know when you do and
These-
when you
these-
don't?
Well, we'll only wrap the estimated ending balance impact fees or the estimated ending balance unrestricted. Those there will wrap, and you can see that they do. But what we do is we still give you a grand total of all those still on line 39 as well.
This cell right here doesn't have a formula in it, but yes. The estimated beginning fund balance does wrap. It's the ending balance of the prior year carries over as the beginning.
Total of these.
Correct, I understand that. Cap, I was looking at it, trying to figure out, we're just looking at the capital improvement with the impact fee revenues. And the discussion is we're not combining those, I just don't know why we're combining them and looking at those figures.
Well, we're
Where
just,
going.
yeah, and we just do it for our purposes to just show you what the total amount of funds in that particular year available that's unappropriated.
So if we used everything we had, we'd still be in the negative in those years.
On, which one is
Yeah,
that one?
once you hit 24,
Once you hit
once you hit
2014,
2015.
you're in the
And that's
negative
when we
throughout.
go down to below,
And
to
have
the
to get a
alternative
bond.
funding sources. And in some cases, we haven't even identified them yet. And part of the reasons we haven't identified them is he's doing a new capital facilities plan, so it could be incorporated into that, but we're not there yet.
So the very bottom line, estimated available for appropriations, funding sources, would include that upper number where you looked at the $2,292,855, and then any additional alternative funding sources.
Would add the 250 into that,
Yeah.
and the 1,500,000 into that, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. We've looked at this for a lot of days, so we know what we're looking at, so I want you to be clear on what you're looking at.
Well, I've been here long enough, Roger, to know that, for example, the police station, I think I've now seen it on fiscal year 2012, fiscal year 2013. Anyway, it just kind of keeps,
Well, yeah,
it's
we're
always
stretching
been
it as long as we
It's always kind of
can.
been 2 years out now for 4 years. And most of the time that happens at the staff level, for whatever reasons, you and the department heads analyze that, and so. I look through these and see a lot of these numbers and think, gosh, by 15, we've got a ton of stuff coming up, but the reality is not all of these will become a priority.
Right.
No, and
You'll
I'll-
see things start to shift again.
And the reason we pushed these out a lot of those years when the economy was down, preservation of cash flow. But we knew that the piper would come piping.
And a lot of them are growth driven, so if we don't have people move in.
No, is that a radio ad?
Where Lisa Langston talks about
Get over it, the recession.
The recession is over, Southern Utah.
Let it go.
Breathe deeply. Let it go.
Well,
It's pretty
I'm not
annoying.
sure I'm to that point. But Kimberly brings up a good point. Here's one of the challenges we've had.
ESPN radio more.
We pushed off capital investment for, in many cases, 4 and 5 years because of cash flow. What we wanted to maintain cash flow, because cash flow really was king. That's where the winners and the losers
That's just
were
because I
divided.
got elected.
Well, but the other issue is, it still hasn't mattered. We've added 1,000 citizens almost every year throughout this whole downturn. And so there are just pressures that are coming, in some cases. Pressures not just in capital budget, that probably is the least of my pressures, but pressures in personnel requests, pressures in a lot of areas that are coming. I mean, we've added 5,000, 4,000 utility customers in the past 5 years. And that comes with its own pressures to serve them. And so we knew that the day was coming when we started to breathe deep, that we realized we couldn't really breathe that deep right yet.
I know we talked about the depreciation or money that needs to be set aside to maintain and repair the items. Wouldn't it be more accurate for us to actually see those figures so that as we're looking at this combined total, instead of the loss of 1.6, it might be more like, in year 15, it might be more like 2.6 or 3.6?
We're going to add
Talk
those.
about
That would be
that.
better.
Yeah, we're going to add those. Because on the other hand, you don't want to get in there and say, oh my gosh, they got a $3 million margin. How marvelous is that? We need to do something. That's not really.
Well, that was what I was asking
That's right.
right out of the gate.
Yep. So,
And with depreciation, it is a little bit of a tricky animal, meaning that, yes, every year we have depreciated costs, but it is not our position to fund depreciation year after year, meaning that,
we put together a capital plan.
right, we put together a plan and they'll bring in operational needs in terms of repairs and replacements, but we don't set aside, if our depreciation costs were $1 million, we don't set aside $1 million and say, you know, you can't use this money for anything other than that. But we try to maintain what we would consider to be a reasonable level of equity to take that on. Because the reality is, if you had a really large project, in a lot of instances, you probably would take out a loan and finance it over time rather than dumping all of your equity at that time, so pay for it.
So I'm looking at, we've got a couple small shops on the horizon. We've got Parks that want one, we've got Sewer that wants one. Can we not have some efficiencies by rolling those into one shop somewhere?
Well, the parks, for instance, this is their shop, and it's got to go. I mean, it's going to go one time or another, and they're actually outsized it anyway.
This Horse Historic Commission may preserve that building.
Geez, let's
If we get the right people appointed, there's
let's hold on that then.
people that remember that place from Regan.
Well, we'll move the
Very
siren
fond
somewhere.
Remember that, Mayor?
Yeah.
We'll move the siren to the mayor's yard.
It
But
hasn't been
anyway,
that long.
this is their shop, and they've had to be spread out all over the place, such as we've moved them, a lot of their equipment up to the old yard up here. And our goal, our ultimate goal, just so you know, was when we got Mike's yard, that there would be these facilities, and they're just buildings on the ground that would house these departments. So our goal is the parks, and it really does do well to kind of, even if, to try to keep them in a place they call home versus them and the sewer department in a place called home. So we've got the land. That's our ultimate goal, is to kind of do that. Now, Parks has put off their facility for a long time because they haven't had the revenues to do it. They just simply haven't had the revenues to build. And Mike's kind of got the same plan with his department as well.
Well, and just to maybe expand on why they have to have separate buildings, especially like the sewer department.
As
You know, the trucks, they leak on the floors. It's not a very clean environment. So they really have to be set aside. The equipment we use in the sewer department cannot be used in culinary drinking water. So by law, we have to actually have a separate backhoe that digs the holes for a sewer problem compared to a water. We have to have separate pumps. We can't use the same pumps in a sewer issue that we do with the culinary water issue. And Parks has their own separate issues with their chemicals that they spray, they have to have clean out areas that they clean out those chemicals into that would be ideal to their building or separate to their building. And they're not big buildings. I think I think what we're looking at for the sewer department, it'd just kind of be a mirror of the old metal building we took down up here and moved out here, which is a street building. I think it's 50 by 80.
Did you do that all down at your complex?
Yeah, it'd all just be part of that complex. And that complex, we got that land from the BLM, and that we had to actually master plan it out. So there's areas like the fire department has a training area down there. We've earmarked an area if the police department ever needs a building for storage of
Criminals.
Evidence.
Evidence.
There we go.
Or equipment or something to that nature. Parks has their area.
Do we have any concern with all of our facilities being south of the river if there's ever some kind of a problem?
Well, one of the things that
Depends on where you live.
See, I live north of the river,
Yeah,
so.
let's see, how many are fine? Well, a few of us. Yeah,
Down there, Public Works.
yeah, I'll tell you.
All the equipment.
It is a good question. Now, this is one of the reasons, of course, that things like the Sunrise Valley Bridge becomes important to us. But oftentimes when we do have notice of like flooding, we actually move equipment on the north side of the river automatically.
Okay.
But, and then it just does make sense. One of the things we look at is kind of serviceability too. I don't think it makes any sense for Kelly to go outside his service territory. You know, and have customers go outside his service territory to access him. Now again, if we move forward with a generation facility, we'll consolidate that all in one place. Parks could be any place because they're all over the city, but yeah, I think there's always that concern, but we're trying to address it in other ways. More access across the river, knowing beforehand where we're gonna stage equipment, those type of things.
Okay. That's fair.
So we'll plan on this being on the 26th agenda.
Now, on the thing, it talked about, on the agenda item, it talked about, proposed rate changes.
Yeah, you're.
Oh, that's next. I thought you were done. Sorry. Oops.
We're gonna be here till 10. We're not.
The way Kimberly talks, we could be.
This will not only be fast, but this could be even somewhat pleasant, this discussion.
Somewhat pleasant?
Well, I'm not gonna say it's 100% pleasant, but I think it's pretty good,
It's like
pretty
the
good.
dentist saying it only hurts a little.
Only hurts a little, could hurt a lot.
Okay, so, these fees are fees that are actually derived out of the utility billing office. They're, connection type, reconnect, new account setup fees. So, I'm just gonna go through the list, talk about what we've proposed and the reason behind that. The new account setup fee, this is a fee that is generated when somebody comes into the office, they wanna sign up for service, they fill out an application, we create a service request, set up the account, do all the paperwork. This fee currently is $25. We have, I've worked closely with Aaron, and he has evaluated the actual costs that he feels are associated in terms of labor involved, now that we have some improved processes and practices in place, that we really feel comfortable that a $5 charge is adequate to cover the cost that's actually associated with performing that work. So we're looking at a reduction there on that fee. We have a past due or late fee on the balance, it's 5%. We'd like to leave that as is. There's a reconnection fee for new accounts, it's currently $50. This is in addition to the new account setup fee right now if a customer's meters are off. So if they come in to sign up and the property is vacant and the power and the water meters have been turned off, then they have a reconnect fee that's associated with that, that's $50. And I have talked to both Mike and Kelly. Again, we've reviewed what we feel the actual cost is associated with the number of service requests that we can do in an hour, and that we feel that we'd be able to reduce that rate down to $25 for that turn-on fee and still be able to cover our costs. The next item is the reconnect fee for disconnect. So this is a penalty type fee. This fee encompasses the same cost as like a reconnect fee, meaning we're having to go out and actually turn on the meter, but there's a penalty phase that's involved with that. And that current rate is $50, and we'd like to retain that as is.
So the penalty, it's actually $25 over what we think the cost is, just to punish them for not paying the bill?
Well,
Is that
on
what's-
disconnect day, the difference is, for new customers that come in, the service that's provided is done by a meter reader. Their rate and the work that they do comes at a substantially reduced cost. On disconnect day, it involves the entire power department staff at this point, and the wage and the rate that's involved with that $50 probably doesn't actually cover the cost that's associated with all the work that's put in
So-
to that, but they wouldn't be able to afford it. And again, we realize that, we're not going to be able to pick up all that in this fee, but the $50 penalty is the one that we feel is necessary and needs to be applied. So this only happens if they actually get turned off at non-pay, and we have to go out and turn them back on. And there is a $50 fee that they have to pay in advance
So
before we will.
Turning it on in that situation is more difficult than turning it on.
It's
for
more
no
costly. It's more costly
It's
for
more
us.
costly just because more paperwork internally?
No, it's because of the staff who has to perform the work.
So it has to be somebody that costs more money to turn it on?
Well, I only
after
have
disconnect?
one, so on a disconnect day, we would have around, on an average, 150 customers that are on that list. We don't process, I only have one meter reader for the power department. It wouldn't be feasible for one person to be able to go through, turn everybody off, and turn them all back on. We don't have the resources for that. So it requires the lineman to go out and perform this work as well. And the rate.
Because
and
they're
the-
physically turning off
And
the
they
power.
have to turn it off in twos, so there's two of them that travel together to the property. And they physically turn the power off with the meter. If there's been any tampering, then the meter has to be pulled, and the meter can only be pulled and reinstalled by someone who's actually certified to be able to do that.
So essentially in that case, it's a two-charge. You've got, I guess you have to recover the money for the people actually shutting it off, and then the guy to go back and turn it back on.
And turn it on, right.
Okay.
So we go out, turn it off, and then we actually come out and turn it back on. The next item, and it's labeled a disconnect penalty, and this is the one that we wanted to have more of a discussion on. So in the past, back in around 2007, we had what we called a shut-off fee, and it was a penalty. We used to have to generate a separate shut-off notice. And so it was a mailing that went out. We printed a statement. We had to mail it out. There was postage and all that was associated with that. So at that time, if we had to mail out that notice, they had to pay a $10 fee for receiving that notice. With some of the changes we did with our utility statement, we're actually now able to have that disconnect notice print as an alternative message on their utility bill. So if you're a past due customer, instead of receiving the message that we might send out that would say, that might give you information about the Water Conservancy District, their message is replaced by the disconnect notice. And so at that time, we went ahead and did away with this fee. However, we would like to impose a $5 fee for any individual who actually shows up on the shut-off list. So the morning of the shut-off day, by the time we come in and we start to generate the list, we'll have upwards of over 200 customers on the list. We have our staff that actually comes in usually between 6:30 and 7 to start preparing that so that the power department can get started as soon as possible on the disconnects. By the time 8 o'clock rolls around, we have a stack of people that's at the door wanting to pay right then, and you're constantly having to basically update your list and amend it to get everything out to the power department. And so this is a fee that we propose to be in place. It's a penalty fee, meaning that if our cutoff that we send out in all of our notices is that you need to pay by 5 p.m. the night before. When we come in that morning, anyone who's paid online up until basically midnight, all those fees do come in, or all those payments come in and are received. But if you hadn't paid by that point, then we have to do this process to generate the list. And there is labor, and it is quite labor intensive. And we would like that penalty to help offset those costs that are specifically for those customers only. This isn't a fee that we'd have to do or a service we'd have to perform if these customers actually were paying their bills on time.
Aren't we already charging a 5% late fee?
They do pay a
Exactly.
5% late fee.
They're already paying
Mhm.
5% of the balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the concern I have is typically the ones that have it shut off are the ones who are in a financial bind anyway. And it's kind of
Mhm.
like, well, let's kick them more while they're down, and another fee here and another fee there, and that goes collections, you got your collection fee there, and, you know, and I know there's an added cost to the city, so I'm just, from a moral point of view, I'm
Right.
having a hard time reconciling, we keep causing them to bleed when they're already bleeding, or do we, just say, okay, our 5% late fee is gonna be enough to cover those costs, let's not hit them with another.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to do actually
Right.
the cost, kind of the cost of service study, because if it's truly a cost of service study, and you'll have to decide whether you believe that or not, it's gonna shift somewhere.
Yeah, but is the 5% to the late fee included?
Well, that's what I
in
think
that
she's
to
saying,
make
is
up
that
for
she's
it?
calculated that these are still additional fees that
So where does the 5% late fee go? That doesn't cost more work.
So the 5% late fees on the balance actually go out to the enterprise funds. So the revenues that generated on those late fees go back to the water, the power, the sewer department, in essence, because the revenue isn't available for them to take care of their ongoing obligations. So in essence, we're charging them interest for not making their payments. Whereas on the $5 disconnect penalty, it would be a revenue that comes into the general fund to offset our portion of the utility office.
What would
and
you
staff.